everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. It's episode 105, and it's DGUTS Unmasked. It's my first video podcast ever. Chief Bob wanted to do kind of like an interview format with me, just asking me questions about like who I am, what I did in my naval career, why I'm doing the podcast, stuff like that. Some of it's the stuff that I kind of held close to the vest while I was on active duty still. I'm not clearly happily retired with I'm on my way to a pretty sweet beard. Looking forward to getting it all Vikinged out. Like when I was sick, it was like all the way down here. Not when the beard was sick, like when I was literally sick, I was able to grow it out for like 5 months. But yeah, so this was super fun. I'm excited to finally start doing this kind of stuff, to put the content out in a video format so it's more easily shareable. Get it out there just on other platforms and just do some of the other things that I've been talking about doing forever. I'm finally ready to start expanding in that way. So I really hope you guys all enjoy this and check it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, let's do the damn thing.
Let's do it.
Sir, it's your lead. I'm just here. I'm the guest. I don't got to be I'm just the guest today.
Well, it seems kind of funny because you talked vaguely throughout the episodes that you've done about your background and where you've been and all that jazz, right? You've talked loosely enough about all of it.
Yeah.
That I don't know how many things there are to pick up, but
I mean,
as a consolidated source,
right.
I guess my thought would be the same thing that you tell everybody else. To start with whatever you want to talk about. What commands you've been at.
I'll talk about everything now. Because it's like if you weren't going through like CSIing your way through 7 years of podcasts, you might not have picked it all up either. So, I'll leave my name out of it still, and it's not because I really care that much. It's just because I kind of like the idea of like, I like the idea of it not being about me. And while it's mostly symbolic nowadays, it's like, it's still, I don't know, it feels better this way. But, I was in the Navy for 21 years. I retired on the 30th of September. Hallelujah. It's been amazing. I haven't gotten emotional and sad yet like I thought I would. It's been all just like walking on sunshine. 21 years. I joined the Navy out of Michigan. That's where I grew up. I was in college at the time at Michigan State, and 9/11 happened. So my brother was in the Navy already. He was on the Theodore Roosevelt back in the day. And so I was already looking at it. I went to his boot camp graduation when I was like 16, and it really resonated with me. And I was like, this is so cool. I want to do this. But then I still like was pursuing graphic design in college because I used to be into graphic design, web design. And so I was like, that was kind of what I thought I was going to do. Right. So I went to college, immediately hated it. It's just not like, it's not my scene. It's not like back then I was living on campus in the dorms and it was like freshman year kind of stuff. And so like, it was just not my scene at all. And I hated it. So I was already looking for a way out.
That's the time you're supposed to like at college.
I know. I wasn't that guy. I didn't start drinking until I was 21 in the Navy.
Same.
Even like the first Westpac I did, I was scared to get in trouble, so I just didn't drink. Like I was that guy. I'm a rule follower, to an extent. But like when I was a kid, I was afraid to like screw up and disappoint my parents and all that kind of stuff. So I just never did any of that stuff. But let's see, what was I? Where did I leave off? I joined. So 9/11 happens. I was already kind of looking at the Navy, and considering leaving college to join the military. And then 9/11 happened, and that was like, it pushed me over the edge. And so I dropped out of college like the next day, and was in a recruiter's office. And so I actually joined the Navy as a corpsman, which is weird. And a lot of people don't know that. I wanted to come in as a corpsman and do like FMF stuff. And then I told myself, like every young man that joins the military, I thought to myself, I was a little more cautious about it because my dad's a Vietnam vet, and all my uncles were Marines in Vietnam. I had an uncle that was a UDT guy. So it was like, and my uncle Brian was like, he had a lot of issues after being in the Marine Corps in Vietnam with like PTSD and like undiagnosed, and like died of effectively like a drug habit when he was in his 40s. But like I heard stories from my parents about all this stuff and from my dad. And so like I knew enough to know that like if I went into some type of like trigger puller career field that it like could have an effect. And so I was a little more cautious about it probably than a lot of just like, 18-year-olds full of piss and vinegar. But I joined as a corpsman to do FMF stuff. And I was like, if I do the FMF stuff and I can succeed in that and I like it and I feel good about it and nothing crazy happens that turns me off, then I was interested in being a SEAL, like every single dude that joins the Navy. Clearly that didn't happen. So when I was in boot camp, so I had a marijuana waiver because I smoked a few times in college with my brother and at the restaurant I grew up working at. So I told him, I'm like, hey, I did this 2 times. And I said it consistently the same the whole time. And they just screwed up my paperwork. And so when I'm at boot camp and I'm getting processed, it says alcohol abuse on my record. And so at the moment of truth, they're like, does anybody have anything they want to tell us? And I'm the idiot that got up with my record and was like, hey, like, I just want to make sure. My dog's barking because my wife's friend is here. I just want to make sure that this isn't what I like. I've never drank alcohol in my life. Like, I don't want this on my record if I'm going to make it a career. And they're like, they open it up because it was like on the outside jacket. And so they open it up.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, no, it's good in here. Here's the drug waiver, whatever. And they're like, well, how many times did you use marijuana? And I said 2 times, just like I said every other time.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not what this says, recruit, and start like lighting me on fire. So then they made me reclassify because you can't have 2 drug waivers and be a corpsman because you handle narcotics and whatever. So I had to reclassify in boot camp where I had access to the 1-paragraph summary of a rating in your Blue Jackets manual, and that's it. Like, so they sent me to a classifier once, and I had a high ASVAB score, so they were trying to talk me into like IS and like a bunch of CT stuff because I like computers. Because the kid's like, what do you like? And I was like, computers. So he's like, yeah, we'll give you a bonus for this, and you can do all these other things. And I was like, I don't know that I would like that. And I'm a researcher. Like, if you don't let me like figure out exactly what this is, like, I'm not going to gamble that the next 4 years of my life are going to suck. So naturally I chose the only career field that I had ever had any experience with, because I'd been cooking professionally since I was like 15. So that's all I knew. And I was seriously considering culinary school before I joined the Navy. So I ended up as a CS, and I wasn't rated as a submariner out of boot camp either. I got to A school. And I mean, it was the Wild West back then, but like I went to A school and it was in Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. And so I went there, I showed up, and after the MS2 at the time he looked at my record, looked at my ASVAB score, and first thing he says to me, he looks at me, he goes, what the hell are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? I have orders here. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he goes, you have I think it was an 86. He's like, you have an 86 ASVAB score. What are you doing here? And I'm like, I have orders, petty officer. And then a couple weeks later, so this dude, he's kind of like for dorks like me, he's like kind of like a legend in the submarine CS community. His name's Chris Nalon. He's been retired for probably 6 years. But he was a master chief. At the time, he was a chief. He's a pretty young chief, and he was like the guy running the A school. And he was a submariner. So for whatever reason, like he had a green light, because I tried to do it when I was at the A school as a SEL, and they wouldn't let me do it. But for some reason back then, he was able to recruit people because they needed people for submarines. So it was like when they do project stuff, he just walked in the classroom, said, hey, anybody interested in submarines? You get more money. And I was like, oh, pick me. And it sounded cool.
I like money.
I was bummed that I wasn't going to get to do like cool stuff with like FMF corpsman. Like I was like that. I joined the Navy. I joined the military to do something really cool, and then get out, probably take advantage of the benefits and go do like a real life job. But I wanted to like experience doing cool guy stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, I panicked and chose this rate because it was comfortable and I knew what it was and I knew I was good at it. But I'm like, this isn't what I wanted to do. So then I was like, well, submarine sounds cool. So I picked that, and then that's how I ended up on submarines. And then, the rest is history. So I left there and I joined in January 2002, pipeline and all that. I got to my first boat, the Louisville, which was in Pearl Harbor in, I think it was August 2002. And then my first Westpac was 9 months long, shot missiles at Iraq. Good times. We basically finished a Westpac, and then they pulled us into Guam, and there's Tomahawks all over the pier. And we're like, what are these for? And then I didn't even have my fish yet. We're just like, what's going on up here? And then they're like, hey, guess what? We're invading Iraq, and you guys are going to go shoot missiles.
You're going to go kill bad guys and break good things.
So that was a 9.5 month Westpac. It was sweet. And
it sounds terrible to do that right off the bat, but we tell every student the same thing. Like all you want to do when you get to your boat is if it's possible, you want to check into your boat like 3 days before you leave for a full deployment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you just want to be underway because the life is so much better underway. But that's when you get a chance to learn everything. You get to actually do your job. You get to do all these things that are like your job and not a bunch of extra nonsense that we deal with in port and during upkeep and maintenance and avails and all that other jazz. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool, but not cool.
When you're not used to it, when you've never done that and all of a sudden you disappear for 9.5 months, you're like, all right,
the deployment part was whatever. Like I'm sure at the time I wouldn't have said that, but I was a dude that, I'm a rule follower and like a people pleaser. At least I was. Right. I feel like I've probably largely grown out of that, but that was kind of in my wiring. Right. So when I got to the boat, I was trying to like overperform and overachieve and be ahead and do all the things that I always do. And I had this like bipolar MS1 that was he was just so angry to be on a submarine and to not be a chief because he just wasn't making chief. And then, and his wife, like his family, he's from Puerto Rico. And like, I think his family just never left. So like, he was always geobaching. He was in the barracks. He was just miserable. Not a bad dude, but like really, really garbage experience for a first lead or whatever. Right. And so he turned like I was the best cook on board when I showed up because I had a bunch of professional experience. Like I had training they didn't have, and experience they didn't have, and like years of it when I showed up. So like I was already the best cook. I just had to learn how to do the submarine part, which I picked up pretty quick. Like the cook submarine part. Then I'm like, okay, I got this. I got my hands around this. So I was like, I really wanted to get my fish. And so I was like constantly, hey, the galley's clean, lunch is done. Can I go get a checkout? And he'd a month into that Westpac just snaps on me one day. And it's just like, you're here to be a cook, not to get your fish and blah, 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 like just expletive filled, like, tirade. And so at the time, I'm like I can't, and I was like a 9 weeks ahead, a hot runner for that whole time, blah, blah, blah. And he's screaming at me, telling me I suck and I need to get better in the galley. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm the best cook here. And I know that for a fact. So I'm just like, what are you screaming at me for? So
to be fair, that's what every P3
I know, but after that, I basically shut down and he didn't care until I went dink. And then he screamed at me again. And so then when I went dink, I was just like, F it. And I just stopped. I didn't even try. So we got done with that Westpac and we were in SRA. And so I'm like by the time that happened, I'm like 12 plus months and my card was like 90% done. And I was at like walkthroughs and I just was like refusing to do it. And my cob called me in the office and was like, what's going on, man? Cause I'm like a good worker and like I cook really good food and I do everything else right. He goes, I know you don't want to fail. And I threw my crawl card at him and said, I don't give a fuck. Like, kick me off the boat. I'm done. Like, this is stupid. And then I had a couple of JOs basically just decide to drag me kicking and screaming through the last part of the qual process. And like, they made a bunch of enemies with like A gang and all these other people because they did all my walkthroughs because they were officer deck and SDO qualified.
Right.
So they dragged me kicking and screaming. And then I smoked my board. I knew everything. Like I wasn't dumb and I had studied. And I was like the dude that I thought I had to be like a subject matter expert before I got a checkout. So I always knew way more than I needed to. Right. So yeah, I murdered my board, but it took me like 13 months. It was not fun. My first boat sucked. Not completely, but like the last few years.
No, but that's brutal.
Was pretty fun. But yeah, it was pretty terrible.
That's kind of surprising.
I caught a good chief at the end.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Dude, nobody would have guessed. I was what one might call a shite bag. For the probably as soon as when I was like a salty third class, and then I ended up getting capped to second because I aced the test and I still didn't advance because they were star re-enlisting people and giving them CS2 at the time.
Oh yeah.
And none of those geniuses could promote off the exam. So it was like impossible for a normal CS to make CS2. It was gross. And so I got capped to second. But I was still like just angry and bitter and I hated everything. And then when I had a really negative experience with just a bad cob, the last year I was there. And he I had never missed anything, never been late to anything, done a good job, blah, blah, blah. And then that last week I was supposed to be, I was checked out of the boat except for the CO interview or something. Mm-hmm. And they were getting underway for a few weeks. And then I was just going to finish. I was going to stay behind, get all my household goods shipped, get everything done. Right. And then check out, transfer when they got back, the day the boat got back. And they gave me duty the day the boat was leaving. And I'm checked out with the security manager. I'm like, I can't even be on the boat, dude. I can't, I shouldn't be here. And so, I took the duty. And so I stood, we were doing you stand all day and then they let you go home, but you got to come back for breakfast. And so that didn't happen. The only time I was ever late for a breakfast ever. And the cob basically said, pack a bag, you're coming underway for that 2 weeks. So I just got screwed on my way out the door, which, I was late. I get it. But anyway, so, it screwed everything up. I couldn't sell my car. I got screwed out of thousands of dollars on that. And then household goods showed up super late. I was sleeping on the floor in my studio apartment in Connecticut when I transferred for weeks because none of my stuff was there. It was super awesome. Yeah, shore duty in Connecticut. I was at the base galley in Groton. And that was where I same thing. I showed up there first 6 months. I just was uninterested. I started going to Johnson & Wales, and it's I was there to get my culinary degree and get out of the Navy. So I just didn't want anything to do with anybody. And then I got this chief that read me like a book and was like, if I put this kid in charge of people, he will have to square himself away because he's the type of dude that when it's just me, I don't care. But it's when they are my responsibility. Yeah. They're depending on me not to suck. Now I need to not suck. So, he put me in charge of a watch section when we had a whole A school class show up. So it was a bunch of babies. And so I was just right. And then by the end of my 3-year shore duty, I was the number 3 EP first class on the base. And so it's just, now I'm super sailor, and so then that's when my chief brought me a message for the Jimmy Carter soliciting for a hot running CS1. He goes, dude, this is your gig. He's like, this is something you'd be great for. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I applied for it and they came and interviewed me and blah, blah, blah. And I got selected for that. And so I went to the Carter as a CS1. And then I was there for probably 8 months and then I made chief, maybe a year. It's probably a year. And then I made chief, and the chief that was there, he had just got a letter of instruction for not doing a great job. And so they basically booted him and kept me, which to do your first chief's tour on that boat, especially being a CS, it's there's a bunch of other jobs, obviously, because it's a special boat where it's the pinnacle of both stress and prestige of doing your job. But on Carter, it's it's the largest submarine crew in the Navy, and that includes GNs when there's SEALs on board. And it's because when we leave, we have a bunch of people with us too.
It's the largest crew, but they're not.
They're
not all ships company.
Right, exactly. When we're out operating,
as far as mouths to feed.
Yeah, I have the most mouths to feed in the whole Navy ever.
I got you.
And then it's the endurance is weird because you don't port anywhere ever unless something goes wrong. And then you can't replenish because of where you're operating and how you're operating. So it's I have to bring everything I need. And so it's it gets really interesting. So I became like a dork about like statistics and spreadsheets and historical data and all that crap.
Yeah.
Got that thing pretty grease lightninged for loadout and stuff. But yeah, I qualified chief watch and duty chief there. They wouldn't let me stand dive, which sucked. It was kind of terrifying.
I was going to say, I'd be a little terrified.
I wanted to qualify because I knew I needed to qualify to make senior chief, and they just wouldn't let me. And then I left there, went to the A school. So that was in Fort Lee, Virginia. So I was an A school instructor as a chief, and then I made senior chief about 8 months before I left. I was the SEL the last year I was there. So I was the SEL as a chief. I was an NMTI while I was there too. That was the first job I did. I showed up to the schoolhouse, qualified as an instructor, and then they booted me over to the barracks because I'm too vocal, and they didn't like that I was telling them everything was broken. So they punted me to the barracks, and I just like embraced that, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed being an NMTI. And then we got a new SEL.
Like a Navy dad.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it for a lot of reasons, and part of it was the program was like basically non-existent and definitely wasn't being implemented correctly. And I had a FC show up that had been an NMTI prior at Corey Station. So he showed up, and he knew exactly what it was supposed to look like when it's taken seriously. And so between him and I, we like put our heads together and like wrote an instruction and did all this, like created programs, created all these things. So it was super fun. And I enjoy like the marching and cadence and PT and all that hoo-yah stuff. It was a good time when it's kids that are brand new to the Navy and are still full of hoo-yah. So yeah, and then I went back to the schoolhouse when we got a new SEL. He wanted me as the leading chief at the schoolhouse because he recognized that like, no, this isn't the guy you banish to the barracks. This is the guy you make run the schoolhouse. It's like, oh, you want to fix it? Okay, fix it. You're the LCPO now. Go.
Right.
So I did that for about a year, and then the last year I was there, and I was like pushing classes. And then the last year, they made me the SEL because that master chief had bunch of medical issues and was about to retire. And he kind of needed to go away and go do medical stuff. So he made me the SEL. And then it was kind of shady the way it went down because he didn't talk to headquarters. He just kind of did it. He just made the decision. And I was under the impression I had everybody's blessing. So I'm like on a phone con with the CMC and all these other people. He's like, where's the other guy? I'm like, oh, he's, I don't know, doing medical stuff. I was like, I'm the SEL now. And they're like, you are? And I was like, oh, great.
Like, all who are you?
Cool. Go call. Well, they knew who I was, but they, what are you talking about? So that was fun. But then I stayed. He convinced him to let me stay in the seat. And then that combined with going to the Senior Enlisted Academy, I think is what overcame the not being qualified dive thing. And like I killed it. You know, I mean, I was at the A school. I was LCPO. I was an MTS. I was doing all this other crap too. But unlike Bob is not an MTS, kids. Sip of my tea. And then so then I made senior chief about 8 months left, and then I left there and went to the Louisiana, which was a BN. That was my first school bus submarine. And that honestly, like in a weird way, that was probably my hardest tour. Like Carter was difficult in its own way because I was like learning how to be a chief. And it's a projects boat, and I was gone all the time, but it was like, I didn't have my now wife. So it was like, all I came home to was a 1-bedroom apartment and Netflix. So being gone was like whatever to me. But then when I was on Louisiana, Ashley was living with me, and then we got married. So it was like, the first time I ever had to be separated from family. And so that made it way harder. And then standing dive made it way harder. Cause on Carter, I was just the cook chief, and I stood duty chief in port, but they didn't really let me in control, even though I was qualified chief of the watch. And like they weren't wrong, cause I didn't have any fleet returnees. I was undermanned. Like I needed to be around supervising, but like also I still needed to qualify. But anyway, but so yeah, in Louisiana, it was like the first patrol we did, I had an SMI. So I told him, I'm like, look, I'm not requalifying anything because we have a lot of work to do, and I need to get this. This is like a big deal because I don't want my division told they're below standards. It affects my career. Like I wanted to make master chief and stuff. So I'm like, I need to do that. I need to do well here.
Right.
So I refused to requalify until that patrol was over. And so we crushed our SMI, did really well. And then I requalified. And so then it was like after that last like 2.5 years, because I was only there 3 years. I like basically wasn't the cook chief. I was the department chief that occasionally dropped into a quarters or something. You know what I mean? Like I was
right.
Standing dive. I was assistant ship's diving officer. I was a simio. I was a department chief. So I'm like at ops briefs and this, and they made me the battle stations drill guy. So I'm like I'm like behind the SCP pulling fuses out. That's a good idea ever. And like, it was so stupid, but they just kept like, oh, you can do things. And like, so they made me do things, none of which had anything to do with my job. Cause in the eyes of 1120s, I don't have a real job.
But
so Louisiana
what you're saying is that's not a bad career path.
So it's the best rate in the Navy. So
sounds familiar to me. So just being good at things. So you do all the things that are not your actual job.
Yeah. And my cob recognized that I had the aptitude to be a cob. And in my opinion, like in his eyes, I think he really believed he was just developing me, but he was taking advantage of me. Like I was doing 60% of his job a lot of the time. Like, I mean, I'm talking like monitoring PD trips, writing. I wrote his CMC package. I wrote his eval. I wrote his award. Like it was inappropriate. Like I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing, but I really I don't think he was doing it like sitting there going, I'm going to make him do all my work. Like, I think he thought that's how you prepare a guy to be a cob. And I learned a lot. It definitely, I think it did prepare me more, but, it made everything more difficult. And I still have some regret about how like my juniors didn't get like as much of me or the best version of me that they deserved. So, but it was kind of like, what do you do? You know, like, cause the second class I had, he's a first class on his way back to a boat here. And he'll probably be a chief in the next year or two. He was doing my job for me like most of the time. And, he was a monster and he had the capacity, but he also was standing galley watch captain and he was doing records. So, I mean, he had a lot on his plate. And it was unfair, but it was like, I was in there arguing to get off the watch bill and they wouldn't let me. And it was a shit show, but yeah. So Louisiana,
so is that when you first started your cob card? Like, did you ever?
No.
I mess with it before that, or
so I started it on Jimmy Carter, and then I think I left it there. So I restarted it on shore duty at Fort Lee. With that, I was doing like just the CMC side of it with my CMC, and I got a little bit done. I was like 20% maybe, and then on the boat, I did the lion's share of it. Yeah, in Louisiana, I came to Group 9 probably 80% done. And that's so I transferred from Louisiana to Submarine Group 9 here, which was my last job. And I was doing SMI inspector stuff. And, you're like the sort of TICOM guy in the area, but my main thing was just doing SMIs on submarines, which is just an inspection for supply. That was like, I got here 8 months in, I had cancer, and then COVID was exploding at the same time. So it was like, I only did like the first 8-9 months of my shore duty, really. Like, and then I kind of got erased by that and COVID, and then they were doing construction, and so I was teleworking, and then I basically skated my way out the door. But yeah, so I've told the story about like I started the podcast at Fort Lee when I was a chief, and I think it was about halfway through that tour I started the podcast, and then somehow kept it up. Like the ones I recorded in the car, I was like driving home or like had just got in my car, like on the boat. Like I'd get off the boat, walk up to my car, and like plug the thing in the bottom of my iPhone and record while I was driving home. And that's kind of how I stayed afloat. I took breaks during that time because like there were times I just couldn't get enough stuff sandbagged to like schedule releases while I was on patrol. But yeah, I kept it going that whole time I was in Louisiana, and then been doing it ever since. And here we are, retired with a beard.
Retired with a beard.
Loving every second.
That's it's funny because that's kind of the way that I heard. So I've listened to podcasts for a little while. I think I may have listened to a couple, but realistically, I think I'd listened to things similar to or effectively were podcasts that I didn't realize that because that term wasn't super popular.
Yeah.
until like when Serial came out, right? And Serial was all the rage, and then that's when like the entire world was like, oh snap, like you can just download basically an NPR show and listen to it whenever you want.
Yeah.
It's like NPR has been doing the exact same thing for 35 years, and everybody's like, have you heard of podcasts now? And it's like, yeah, man, it's literally
that's what's weird about existed. I look back at when I started it, and I'm like, podcasts were still kind of new. Like they weren't brand new, but like, and I don't even remember what I first started listening to, but it was still like it wasn't as popular as I thought it was when I started listening to them. But It was like the acceptable format in my mind of like, how can I reach sailors where they are? And like, I don't want my face and name on it and blah, blah, blah. And so then I settled on that. But
no, all that makes sense. It was just funny because like I'd been listening and I talked to my wife about it for a while of like, man, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know when.
You should.
Like, and I've talked to you about it too. I have a few random ideas that I've had. Most of them involve another person though.
Yeah.
And because otherwise I just feel like I have nothing against that format. And there's times that it works really well, but outside of like some investigative true crime style or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If it's just one person telling a story for all the time, like in my head, it would just feel like I'm just reading a bunch of essays that I wrote.
Yeah. That's kind of what it is.
And I'm like, I'm an over preparer. So I would write everything out ahead of time and it would sound like that. And I was like, that's not really me.
Yeah. I think like the first 3 years of me doing it was just me. Like I didn't even, because I didn't know how, and I didn't really have time to book them or anything. But Grant Kahn was the first interview I did. And that was weird because like the way that I did it was super weird. And like,
you mentioned that at one point.
Yeah. Like, so we recorded the whole thing and I was recording my audio on my end with Audacity, and he was supposed to be recording the audio on his end, and he didn't. He thought I was recording everything. So when we were done, I just had this one audio file of me talking. So I sent him the audio file, and he literally just listened to it and then re-answered or like re-interjected his inputs. And then I had to like edit it. It was such a dumpster fire, dude. I probably put like, I don't remember how long that episode is, but I probably spent 5 times as long editing it and getting it to like work. And it was such brutal. But it was fun.
That's like stuff like that has always been my biggest fear with it. So I never really, And it's funny because everything I've looked up about podcasting, generally speaking, everybody's like, you know, what kind of gear do I need? What I need for this? What I need for this? And everybody's like, literally just do it like you did. Like you can just hold your phone up, hit record on the sound app and post it.
I mean, like at the very beginning, what I did was I Googled good USB mics or something, and Blue Yeti kept coming back. Blue Yeti. So I went to Best Buy, found a Blue Yeti, plugged it into my MacBook Air that was like 3 or 4 years old, and I like free audio recording software, and I found Audacity. And that's it. That's how I started when I would record them just stationary. And then, I ordered like a microphone that plugged into my phone because the first podcast I ever listened to, the guy started by doing that, record him on his phone. And he's like, it's better than nothing. It's like what the alternative is not doing it. And so I was just like, especially when I get to the boat, but I mean, I did them while I was at Fort Lee too, but I knew when I got to the boat, I'm like, I'm not going to have time. So it's like my commute home's like 30 minutes. I'm like, they're going to be 20, 30 minutes long. Yeah. And that's what you'll see. There's stretches where it's just like spin the yarn after spin the yarn. Cause it's like, that's what I would do. I would just record those on the ride home. And it's better than doing nothing.
Most of them talk about that too, of like, generally the quality of the episode as far as like topic and what you say and all that will keep people invested if you have low quality sound. Like if you have low quality audio and it's a terribly worded or produced or whatever the right word is, like scripted, I can't think of the right term, but if the it sounds bad because I don't mean quantity is in episodes, but like, if what you're saying is good enough or important enough, people will give you a pass on bad audio quality. But if they are both bad, then you're screwed. But you could have the best audio in the world, but if you don't have much to say that's worth listening to,
if the content sucks, you're screwed. And it's like, for a long time, my audio wasn't great. It was decent when I would use the Blue Yeti, but I was frustrated with it because I could never get it to sound like I can now. And I found all these YouTube videos where the Blue Yeti, like they would make it, their audio would sound the way that I wanted it to sound in the YouTube video. And they said they were using a Blue Yeti and they would show you all these tricks and all this crap.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it to work. So I finally just threw my hands up and I literally Googled what does Joe Rogan use? And I bought it's a Shure SM7B off of eBay. I got it used, but it's like I don't know what they cost brand new, but I'm pretty sure I paid like $350. I was
gonna say they're like $400 brand new.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap. And you can actually, now that podcasting has blown up, I helped my buddy start one. He does like Bitcoin stuff and finance and whatever. And they make these in like a smaller podcast version, and it's like 170 or something like that. But it's like, I still run it through filters and do some stuff in Audacity, but like it's the microphone doing most of the work. And it's like, it's an XLR mic that goes through this little amplifier thing and into this, Scarlett like XLR interface that makes it so it's a USB, so I can plug it into my computer, blah, blah, blah. So like, yeah, but it took me years to progress to this point. And like, I didn't start this way. I went and bought $100 Blue Yeti and plugged it into my existing computer and used free software.
Right.
The end. And it's like, you don't even need to do that.
No, I just over research everything.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I'd spent God knows how long over researching everything and listening to podcasts of like all kinds of wild stuff. I think we've talked about it before, but like a lot of mine are usually, it's the same thing when I read. I like to be informed. Yeah. Like I like to learn something, not just be entertained. There's obviously two sides to that. You know, obviously the entertainment thing is something, and it's not that I've never read a fiction novel or whatever before, but in general, I appreciate learning things pretty much whenever I can. And so I also, because of that, I'm a serial hobbyist, which sounds bad, but like, I can't just go buy, like when I found out that I enjoyed like cycling, I was like, oh, I'll go buy this road bike, but I can't just go buy a road bike and then start pedaling, right? It's literally just go ride a bicycle and get exercise. It should be the easiest thing in the world. But no, it took me like months of researching which like brands and this and which model and what is this.
You have one of those like spandex suits and the bullet helmets or whatever.
Yeah, man, I don't have the bullet helmet, but yeah, I got 2 of the suits. And it makes a difference. And then I had to over research that. Yeah, why do we have those? What is the purpose of this? And whatever, right?
Dude, I used to do Olympic weightlifting competitively. And the first time I did a competition like locally, you had to wear a singlet. And I did not want to. And then because you look ridiculous, but then when I did and I lifted with it, it makes it way easier. Like it's so much less restrictive, and you're like, it's like spandex. It's like, it looked ridiculous though.
Well, it's just funny. So of course, like I over research literally everything. Yeah. But because I always like to learn stuff, I was driving across country. So my move from California to Connecticut. Somewhere in there. The first couple of times I moved cross country, I did books on tape.
Yeah.
One of the times, so when I moved from Connecticut to, all of this is so confusing. Hold on. So
I get confused too, man. I don't even like when I see people.
First boat was in Washington.
Yeah.
First boat was in Washington. I was, I joined the Navy married, but we were separated for a while. I just got to bank BAH and separation pay and all this wild stuff.
Yeah.
While I was at boot camp, and I told everybody up and down, like it was a pain for me to join because technically since I was married, she had to sign off on paperwork. So I had to go find this girl that I hadn't talked to in 6 months at least and be like, hey, I don't even know where you're at in the world, but you know, can you tell me where so that I can have some guy from the Navy come meet you and sign up, whatever. Right. So that happened. Anyways, I was on a boat in Washington. While I was there, we split up for good, for sure. Got divorced, finalized. And I left when I left the boat in Washington. I went to Connecticut for shore duty. And driving across country, I was just driving by myself. And so I needed something like music can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to books on tape. I did the same thing when I left sub school to go to Washington. That's when I finished the last 2 books of Harry Potter because I was impatient. Like the movies 1 through 5 were out, but the last 2 books or however worked out, right? Yeah. Basically the rest of the series was out in book form, but not in movie form. And I'd only watched the movies, but I had to know how it ended. Yeah. So I found the books on tape and I just listened to those while I drove across. Typical. And then, so when I came back, there was a couple of podcasts that I listened to. Like I used to play WoW. I still do sometimes because I'm still a nerd, but I am an IT. But so I found a podcast about that, and it was something to listen to. Like, hey, people are talking about something I'm interested in. Yeah, this is neat. And so you listen to that, and then you burn up a bunch of episodes, and then you're kind of like, all right, let's find the next one, and then you keep going, right? So I'd done that, and then I listened to podcasts while I was out here. A lot of roller derby podcasts, actually. Because
did you do roller derby? Or I thought your wife did it.
She played. I refereed. So when I was in Washington, I just kind of became like a big fan. Yeah. And then I moved, but I knew enough because again, I over-researched. So I'm like, I'm going to read the rule book so I know what's actually going on. So I read the rule book and I was like, I know how to skate because I was a rink rat in middle school. And so when I got out to Connecticut, I was like, I'm going to start roller skating or start refereeing. Yeah. And so I had good skates. I started reffing. And that's how I met her. She played, I was a ref. And I actually met her before I even checked into the command. I was still on transfer leave when I showed up to one of their practices. And then listened to a bunch then and kept going, kept listening. Right. And you're just constantly looking for more once you find that medium of like, oh, there's so much stuff that's out. There's a podcast on everything. You know, listen to all the things. And so then when I drove, then we were in Connecticut California. When we moved to California, it was me and her. I think we listened to some of Serial and then music, and she slept a lot and whatever. And we did lots of sightseeing and all the fun things because we didn't have kids yet. And then kept listening to them in California, and I would pre-download a ton of podcasts
for like deployment.
And I would intentionally not listen to them, which was rough because anything that had to do with like timely stuff I couldn't do. And so I was like, Joe Rogan has really long podcasts, really long interviews of random people. And it doesn't really matter when you listen to them. Yeah. So I downloaded a bunch of those and listened to those. And eventually you get tired of listening to this dude talk about moose meat and microdosing. And so I found other stuff, right? And then I moved. Yeah. When we left California to come back to Connecticut, we had a 2.5-year-old and a 1-month-old. So we flew my wife and kids out to Connecticut so they didn't have to drive. And then I drove. So I drove across country again by myself. Yeah. Same thing. Had to listen to podcasts. So I listened to some of your episodes then, I think, because I was just like, I got to find something. So I literally Googled like Navy and like scrolled through a couple and I was like, cool. Don't give up the ship. I'll listen to that. Right. Download a handful of episodes. And I just added it to the playlist. And then eventually you get through to where you're like, I had this one. Let me give it a shot. And then you hear like the cheesy 8-bit intro. And I'm like, what am I?
I'm never getting rid of this music.
I know, but I was immediately
I've
like,
any negative feedback from listeners, it's that the intro music is awful and I don't care.
I heard it and I was just like, what am I doing?
I love it.
And then literally somewhere in there, you had mentioned that you were like a submariner or something. Yeah. Somehow it came out that you were on a submarine. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. So like, he can't be a total idiot. And so I was just listening to a couple of them. And I'm like, okay.
Challenge accepted.
Download more like a rest stop or whatever. Yeah. And then leave on deployment. Don't think about it. And then same thing, came back and I'm like, all right, what else does he have? And again, most podcasts at the time or what I was familiar with were interview centric, right? Yeah. Or multiple people at least. Right. And so then I flew the family out. I drove a car across with all of our immediate things that we needed. And then I turned around and flew back to California and went on a deployment for 7 months. And then when I got back from that, I listened to it again because then now I had to drive myself again, but with my truck and the last of my things back across country again. And one of these days I'm going to pick a second duty station on the same coast, and it's going to be weird.
Dude, that was me here. It was the first time I stayed in the same place was Louisiana to Group 9, and that was my last job. So
weird.
It's awesome. But not having to PCS is amazing.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I'm hoping that something similar works out for me. But so anyway, so then when I drove back across again, and I enjoy that. Like I'm an only child. I enjoy like, I grew up listening to baseball on the radio, even though I had a TV. We didn't have cable, but like, you could pick up baseball games on normal TV. But I was an only child, so I was used to like listening, just hanging out in my own head by myself type deal. So I don't mind road trips like that.
Right.
And so I was listening to it again, listen to more, and I just laughed because I felt like every episode in my head. Maybe it was just in my head, but I swear it sounded like more desperate every episode. You're like, please, just anybody reach out, please. If you're remotely interested.
I mean,
if you exist in the world, please just tell me that you exist.
It's like The Walking Dead. They're like on the ham radio trying to like, is anybody out there? Like that was the beginning, dude. It was like nobody was listening to it. It was like, a handful of like people who knew me, like old students and chiefs and first classes that I had worked with and blah, blah. But then, and like my parents and then like, and they still listen to every episode. My dad will text me about
I love it.
But it's like, I don't even know how or when it started growing really. Like I know for a long time I was like not spamming, but kind of spamming. Like I was joining like these Navy Facebook groups, and when I would publish an episode, I would just share it into the groups. And eventually like they would get pissed because it wasn't what they were for. And I'm like, well, how else do I get the word out? Like I like, don't know. I don't have the money to pay for advertising. And like, and I have since like I've advertised a few times. I don't really know how effective it is, but anyway, but I don't even know how I succeeded in like getting the word out really, but like I think Reddit helped a ton. When somebody told me to post the episodes on Reddit, that helped a ton, I think. But it was already kind of like, I mean, it was doing pretty well by that point. So I don't even know.
Well, so I started. That's when I finally, like when I got out here and I moved, and I'm like, I'm on shore duty. It's my second time here at the schoolhouse. Like I know what I'm doing to a loose extent, right? Everything changes, but I've been at this exact command before. So it wasn't going to be it wasn't like I'm going to show up and then be like, hey, we actually don't teach anything about submarines anymore. We teach something else. Like I knew what to expect, you know? And so I was like, all right, cool. I got time. We bought a house. I had my own little man cave in the basement. And so I was like, all right. So that's when I finally spent money. I don't even remember when, but I think I spent actually when we got our Biden bucks whatever you want to call it.
That's
right?
when you bought that's when you bought your mixer
and the
board
mic
thing. Okay.
Yep. That and the mic. Okay. I got them all at the same time. And then, but I'd talk to you. Maybe I hadn't.
We talked before. No, we had talked several times before that. I don't know, dude.
No, I did. I had
something.
I have another mic that I got that's like, it's cheap, but it actually works really well. But it's USB or XLR.
Oh yeah, so that's the one that you told me to get for a travel mic. Yeah. I still have that one. It's like a Samson or something like that.
Samson Q2U.
It's good.
Dude, it works great.
Yeah. No, and that one was like $30,
$40,
$40 on Amazon. Like it works good. Yeah. Works better than my Blue Yeti did.
Especially for $40. No, it's perfect. But yeah, it was funny because you kept saying like to reach out, and I'm like, who am I? Like, I'm just some random dude.
Who am I? Like, who's anybody?
No, I know, but right. But that's like a good parallel for everything in the Navy. But I talked to, I'll tell you about that in a second. But but no, it was just funny because it was like, I don't know anything, but like I want to do a podcast. And I need to break the ice somehow. And then you would constantly just sounding more and more desperate. So I'm like, all right, man, I'll message you. And I'm like,
I need to go back and listen. I want to hear how desperate I sounded. I don't remember feeling desperate, but maybe.
No, but like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just giving you a hard time, but it was just like, I'm just a guy, but whatever. And then so when I sent you the first email or whatever, my thought was like, I'm going to be at the bottom of some list of like,
nah,
there's going to be like 8 people ahead of me.
Oh my God, somebody's listening. Like,
I think you were gone or something. I think you were still on the boat.
I probably,
I don't remember.
I don't remember how long ago. I might have been on like an SMI or something. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, because you didn't respond like right away, but it wasn't like months later, I don't think. Yeah. But either way, right? And then that's when we caught up, and then you kind of realize how small the Navy and or especially the submarine fleet is. And you're like, oh, cool. So we actually have like 47 mutual friends.
Mutual friends on Facebook. And we're like, oh my God, we know everybody that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so it's kind of funny. Talking to you since then. And yeah, I don't know. So it's funny because like if anybody that is listening, like just if they say to reach out, just reach out, man.
Yeah, man. You
can just be a random dude.
Yeah.
Or girl.
I'm a random dude. Like that's what's so stupid about people not like I get emails that are borderline hero worship sometimes. And it's like, calm down. I'm just a dude that does a podcast on like it's not. I'm not I'm not Johnny Depp, and I bet you he's even pretty chill. Like, I'm not a guy that you need, like, and I don't get it because I'm pretty forthcoming about like who I am and what I did. Like, I'm just a dude that was a Master Chief in the Navy. Like, it's not like I understand when like junior people are intimidated because that's like I was intimidated by Master Chiefs when I was in E3. So like, yeah, I get that, but I don't get when people like. I don't like some select email me. He's like, I don't even expect a response. I'm like, why? It's like the whole point. Like, that's what I do here. And I was like, of course I'm going to respond to you and send you a charge. I'm like, it's what I do, dude. Like, this is kind of the whole mission of the thing. Yeah. Like, you know, like this, yeah.
Like it's all coming to fruition with this.
Totally going to respond.
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
No, it's funny. I think that's the biggest thing that I've kind of caught on to. But of a lot of it is like when you're in charge of something, right? It's not necessarily because you have, I don't know, it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? But when you get vocal about things and passionate and you like kind of put your foot down, you go, no, this is what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And you become like in charge of something or you create something. It's not so much that you are in charge of that thing because you had that idea or vice versa. Like, I don't know, they kind of go hand in hand, but it's funny because then you eventually, when you're that person put in that role, you're like, I'm just a dude who just was complaining about this thing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I'm now the expert on this. Like, doesn't somebody have some training on this? And
that's kind of how I felt about this whole thing. Like you just described my 7 year, the 7 year like maturation of my like outlook, I guess, is like at the beginning, I was just venting / maybe this will help out. And then somehow I became the expert and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the only person that is like, not like thinking this way.
For this.
Yeah. Like, how am I the guy? Like it doesn't, because I would have like, chiefs and stuff reach out predominantly and they're the ones going like, oh my God, thank you. Like I thought I was the only one that thought this way. And then I'm like, but then you have like the face plants that happen at the high level or like the stupid things they say or do or whatever. And like the really like out of touch policy and like actions that they take or whatever. And I'm just like, am I the only one? And I know like CMCs that think this way. Like I know, but they're anomalies in my opinion. But like, so I know I'm not like the only one. Maybe I'm the only one willing to say it out loud to everyone for everyone to hear or something. I don't know. Like, cause it feels like the vast majority of people think very similarly or the same or what, you know, adjacent or whatever. but they're not willing to be public about it. You know what I mean? They're not willing to say it in a mess meeting or, and what's funny is in mess meetings, when I would talk the way that I do on the podcast, it was like, I'm the guy, I'm like the rabble rouser. You know what I mean? I'm like the dude that everybody's kind of like, either I'm a bully or will you just shut up? Or like the cops chin checking me because I'm getting too big for my britches or something. And it's like,
I was going to say, I will say that it gets exhausting when you go after so here's the problem is basically like, imagine that like super vocal, complaining but knowledgeable second class who just wants to tell you everything that you're doing is wrong. Right. And they're not dumb. They're like smart enough to be dangerous about whatever they say. And it's the same thing, except you like get paid twice as much and you have a mic. And so now it's like, could you just stop, dude? Like, just please shut up in color once, you know? But then it just gets exhausting. And like, you know, that's just the thing that comes with experience, I guess, of like, there's no real way to teach that. Of like, at some point you're going to go, man, this is exhausting arguing with everybody about everything. Maybe I should just shut up in color. And then you go back and forth and you find that balance maybe.
I mean, honestly, like my balance was retiring. Like that last year and a half, I was so exhausted with being in constant conflict with everything and everyone all the time that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And it's like, I'll do the podcast, but like in real life, being the only guy in the room going, are we really going to do this way? Like, for instance, they email out a spreadsheet for me to rank a bunch of first classes, right? I just checked into the command and, because of the watch floor thing that they do, right? Like a lot of them work nights. I've never seen these kids in my life. And the way the spreadsheet works is everybody gets an equal vote. So like the people that are in a position to directly evaluate this kid get the same amount of like weight in their vote that I get. And I'm like, I couldn't pick this kid out of a lineup. And they didn't send out like a package or anything where I could like evaluate their evals or brag sheet or anything. It was literally just their name and rate. And I'm like, and I immediately responded to the email to the SEL and a bunch of other people. I'm like, is this really what we're doing? Because I'm not voting on it. Like, this is stupid. This is not how this should be done. I don't even know who these people are. Why should I get a vote at all? Like, their chiefs should be briefing it in a room so we all know what's going on. And because I don't even like the way most places do it in the mess, because I still don't feel like I have a complete image, but I understand that that's just kind of how it's going to happen most of the time. But like, no, I'm saying like the way I liked it the best was when I was at a remote learning site and we got ranked against all these other remote learning sites by our like higher headquarters. They would send out, we would have to compile packages so that the Chiefs in like San Diego,
Sailor of the Year package.
So the Chiefs in San Diego could rank my first class appropriately. And I'm like, there were still flaws, but it was probably one of the best because I at least felt like it was kind of like a Chiefs board almost. Like I had all of the documentation. So like, as long as that's accurate, I can evaluate them pretty honestly, I think. So like, I think it should be both. Like, I think I should be there in real life and have all their stuff. So like, maybe I have some anecdotal experience with them in real life, but then also I have their evals and their awards or whatever, some kind of package. But and like I'm the one that's like saying this is stupid. Like I checked in 5 seconds ago and like it's coming from a Master Chief SEL, our CMC's here, like all these of them, like there was like 6 Master Chiefs on the staff at the time. And I'm just like, I'm the guy that's going to raise the alarm. Like seriously. And that's been a theme for, I mean, at least all of my khaki adult life, like for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
So
then what's the standard, in 21 years, what's your sort of like, what would not your charge be, but it's kind of the same idea, right? Of like, what's your biggest takeaways / lessons learned / advice?
I mean, it depends on the audience, but like, like junior sailors would ask me all the time when I was an instructor. Basically, everybody wants a life hack or like a cheat code or something.
Right.
And it's
what's your life hack?
What are the keys to success? Yeah. And it's like, it's comical how far the tenets of show up early with a great attitude in the right uniform and work really, really hard. It's comical how far that will take you. Like I have shown up early and squared away and like stayed late, right? Shown up early in a super squared away uniform with a, good attitude as I could muster, and
as you're capable.
For me, like the two things that I was really great at 3 out of 4 of them. My attitude wasn't always great, but I was always super motivated to do a good job. I just wasn't always like, rainbows and butterflies, but my uniform was always pristine, like shiny boots and like crispy creases and all that stuff, always. And then showing up early and staying late and just working harder than everyone else. And so like, it's comical how far that will take you. And what is even more funny to me, or frustrating maybe, is like my output, I could have dialed it down to like 60% and still outperformed all of my peers. And so it was like, I have this like measurement of like good for me, and then good objective by the objective measure of whoever my reporting senior is. And it's like, and it's funny because I say that and I'm like, so you would think I was like a number 1 EP sailor my whole career, and I wasn't. But that's, we get into the like being a cook in the Navy, and particularly the submarine force conversation.
Yeah, the politics of rankings.
Yeah, the politics of rankings and evals and blah blah blah. But like, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But I did promote early. I got meritoriously advanced. I, won awards. I mean, I wasn't like Sailor of the Year ever, and I wasn't the number 1 EP. I don't think ever. Maybe as a second class or something. I don't know. Like, but not. I've never been an EP as a chief, a senior chief, or a master chief ever. That's not true. I was a chief on shore duty. I was an EP. But it's like, I have to be at a cook command for it to happen. And that's what service support is: cooks, LSs, and admin. So it's like, it's got to be that type of a command. Because like, I got an EP when I was at the base galley too. Where you don't get discounted. Yeah, I was an EP at the base galley too, but like in Groton, at least back then, I mean, 80% of the shore duty billets were cooks. It seemed like it was like,
and the rest were security staff,
and port ops, and that was it. Like for the actual base, it was all MAs, some random port ops people, and all just a ton of cooks, like barracks, galley, and some other randos.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it was. I got ranked competitively there, but like when I'd be on a boat, it was like you're always 20% lower than you should be, no matter what, unless you have like, I mean, there's a boat on the waterfront right now that has a cook Cobb, and I'm hoping that he is better at that. And then what's funny is a good buddy of mine just made Master Chief as a CS, and he's the CS chief on that boat. So there's 2 Master Chief cooks on the same crew. It's going to be your opposite crew, actually. Yeah, they're great, dude. I like my buddy Alan. He's the guy that relieved me on Carter. He's amazing. Just like, I was so happy he was the guy that made Master Chief this year, because it was like there was like not really other options unless there was a Cobb qualified guy I didn't know about. But like, he's just such a beast, and he deserves it. It'll be cool to see, because he's going to be a Cobb eventually. And being on that boat with that dude, because like he's like a cook. The Cobb is a cook, but he's like a ship's control wizard. Like, he was better at like the stuff that I had anxiety about being a Cobb about. He's like, that's his jam. Like, and he was good at CS stuff too. Like, I did his SMI on his last boat, and he got above standards, which is the highest grade you can get. But like, and he basically won a NAY, which is like that food service award that they do for the best food service operation. He basically he transferred right before the inspection, I think, or before the results, but he was there for the inspection. So it was like, he won a NAY, so he's really good at his job too, but like, he's probably better at that stuff, which is like the anomaly of anomalies. So it's like the perfect dude for Alan to learn from, because he's got the cook perspective, but he's also really good at that other stuff.
Yeah.
Alan's a wizard too, though. He'll be fine. But yeah, and so like those things are what I don't know how I got so off track. Just besides, I'm a squirrel. Those are the things I tell junior sailors. And I mean, I tell certain like junior sailors, I mean, for me is like up to junior first classes. And then when I get into like board eligible first classes and like young chiefs and stuff, it's basically what's in my charge. I've codified a lot of it. It's a lot of like random, but not type stuff. Like, one of the things I say is like leadership by example is the most powerful tool that I've ever seen. Like in leadership, It's like, it's really easy to say all the right stuff. And it's really easy. Like I had a cob that did that. He was like a used car salesman. Like he said all the right things about cleaning, stowage, preservation, and reds and all that. You know what I mean? Like, and he sounded good saying it. Like when he first checked in and took over, like I thought, I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. Thank God. And like for 6 months he was, and then he took his foot off the gas. And it was like, he was very good at just like parroting the party line and saying all the right things and then going and sitting in the chief's mess like a bump on a log. And it like never went back in the engine room to observe cleanup or field day or anything. But it's so important that the bilges be clean. Yeah, I mean, like one of those guys.
Right.
So like being like, for me, when he put me in charge of a Sparkle team right before Orse, I think I was down in the bilge blasting, and I'm a senior chief, most senior guy in the submarine, not named Cobb. And I'm like, give me that. I want the steam Jenny. Give me that thing. And I was down there just blasting the shit out of everything. And it was super fun, but it's like, also, I don't need to do that. I could have sat there and read a book. Like, I mean, it's engine room, so you can't do that.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? I could have sat there and done nothing, and nobody would have called me out on it. So, but it's like, because I was down in the bilge blasting, everybody else was cleaning. Everybody else was working. They're like, because if Seaman Timmy sees me down there, then they're gonna well, I gotta do that. Like, I gotta work and I gotta clean or whatever. So,
did you ever get the feeling that a common perception that I've heard from people when they do stuff like that is like, oh, he must have gotten in trouble, and that's why he's out here. Like, you're the pariah that like you got banished to the bilges in the engine room. And I mean, I could such a screw up type deal.
I could see that being a perception if it had happened differently, but in this case, it was like the Cobb lost his mind because the person in charge wasn't doing a good job. So that guy got like fired because it's like everybody knows CPS is basically the Cobb's grade on Orse, right? So it's like, and it's really important to their like the way they're evaluated to like go on to another cool job,
right?
So they don't like a CMC level job, and so like the Cobb lost his mind because the guy that was running it initially was doing a crappy job and nothing was getting clean, and so I got brought down there to fix it. And so I think that was kind of understood, was like the reason I was down there was because I was fixing it.
Okay.
But yeah, I totally,
which is different.
I think I think it would be really easy to perceive it that way though. Yeah. But
you know what I mean? Like, cause
it was unique.
There was a time when like when I was, the standard, I show up to the boat, and spent my time down in FSAing for a while. And then, I think I'd had my fish. There's me and an A-ganger, and we checked in the same day. We were neck and neck with literally everything up until both of us checked out. Because we just had that, like, I had nothing against, I love the dude. He's out now, but we never had anything against each other. But there was like that, like he qualified what? Like, all right, I guess I got to go do that too, or like you'd hear word of like, hey, did you hear? Let's go over there. He's qualified chief of the watch. And you're like, somebody print me a card. I got to go qualify chief of the watch now, like I got to keep up.
Yeah.
And it was constant keeping up with the Joneses. But it wasn't like a bad thing. It was actually very beneficial to both of us, obviously, because we constantly pushed each other without ever saying anything to each other about it. But we both got called down at one point. We had an SMI coming up, and they were like, hey, we need kind of like an all-star crew down here to FSA up until then. And so the CS chief was basically like, hey, I need 2 people. I need at least 2 guys that are like senior, that have done it before. They're coming back again. Sorry, they're going to deal with it. And so they basically said like, all right, well, who do you have in mind? And he had mentioned the two of us. And so they kind of worked it out. I don't know. I wasn't in the room, obviously. I just got told I was going back. But I did, between him and my chief, both got told. And again, it could have been totally blown smoke up my ass. But basically got told, hey, they asked for you and this other guy specifically.
Yeah, so no, it happens, dude. I did that. I asked for specific people.
I wouldn't doubt
it.
100%. I mean, it's not like it's the biggest brag in the world to say I was good at doing dishes, like I'm not saying I was the greatest warfighter in the world. I could clean some dishes totally happily, bang them out quick and keep everything clean the way it was supposed to. Because all I had to do is throw some headphones in, listen to some music. I was in another planet and I could just crush it for a while. Right. Yeah. And then he was our TDU guy, the A-ganger.
Yeah, of course.
But right.
That's what I did too.
Both of us had our fish. We were super senior. Yeah. And so it was actually like,
it's chill.
That was probably one of my favorite times on the boat.
Yeah.
So much better. Cause it was like
a vacation, dude. Like you don't have any responsibility at all. I always tell FSAs when they complain about being an FSA, I'm like, dude, in 2.5 years, you're going to be begging me to come back. And it happens without fail. They become salty second classes.
Where the money was at.
Please let me come back to the decks.
With fish was where the money was at.
Oh yeah.
During the meal, right? Like I would go through the dishes and all that stuff, but when I was done, if I wasn't doing the dishes during the meal,
you're like King Crank. You just sit down and watch a movie. Like you don't have to do anything.
I'd just wander around and I'd be like, and you would do the cheesy, like, hey man, you need a refill on that. And then like,
so we're like, so happy to be there, dude.
Go get me this whatever. And you're just like, no, you go do that, fatty. Like, you got room for that in that.
I had
that poopy suit and
nuke electrician that was qualified engineering watch supervisor that FSA'd for like 2 weeks because he had some weird security clearance issue. And so he was the best, like, because he would just sit there and heckle everybody on the decks and like, but he was amazing. And he like was the FSA LPO. He would run all those guys, tell them what to do, tell them how to do. It was amazing.
You'd see, like, I remember like at one point they were watching a movie. It was dark on cruise mess while they were eating because they were watching something. And I remember seeing like hearing a bunch of people laugh. And so I kind of stopped and I was like, what are they, you're peeking through the little window that you can kind of see out there.
Yeah.
And then I see everybody dying laughing again. And I'm like, what are they watching? So I stopped and I walked out there. And one of the guys was like, hey, Craig, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm watching this movie. And somebody's like, oh, he's got fish. And he was like, oh, yeah. All right. And then like kind of let it go. Right. And I'm just standing there watching it. And somebody's like, hey, man, your window's getting full. And I was like, then go wash them. I'm watching this. And I don't remember what movie it was, but we all just kind of laughed. Everybody kind of laughed about it. And I watched like a minute and a half of it, right? And then I went back in there, going back doing my job. But like, it was so nice to be able to, like, feel like that part of the crew, right? And be able to do and say those types of things, and not just get completely demolished because of it. But yeah, as soon as it was over, he was like, hey man, like, you're all set down here. I appreciate it. And they sent all of our reliefs down. I remember we had like this big meeting of like, hey, you're going to shadow this guy for a day. You're going to shadow this guy for like, you get one watch for turnover type deal, 1 12-hour shift.
I didn't even get that. I can just show up and be new. And
so they did it. Well, they did it in waves. Yeah. And I was the last person to get relieved finally. And so everybody was done. And he had this big meeting of like, all right, guys, we're going to go dominate, whatever, right? Some Hooyah chief speech about being an FSA. And I'm the only one standing there. And I just remember staring at him with like the worst look on my face. And he looked at me and he's like, your relief is coming. Just wait.
Shut up.
And it's just, and I'm staring at him just like shaking in my head. And I was like, all right, man, I'm going to go to the rack. Like, so with, I guess, obviously everybody starts at zero with a podcast or this platform. How, like, where are you at now, 7 years in? What's like I don't even know how you measure any of that stuff, right? Like you've given me the logins and I've tried looking, but I don't understand how anybody does this. So,
I mean,
how many people do you figure listen monthly?
Monthly so it depends, like, cause this only real analytics that I had, and I think I've looked at like the iTunes one before, but it's only iTunes and it's like people listen through a lot of different platforms. And so I don't think it registers anything except iTunes. So I look at SoundCloud because that's my RSS feed. Like that's like the source of the podcast.
Right. That's where you post it.
So the analytics there tell me it depends, but it's usually around 8,000 a month.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. But I think some of that might be like weird. And I don't know if they're bots or like, because there's some weird things that happen with SoundCloud specifically because it's primarily a music platform.
Right.
And I think it's kind of like, like every time I post something on Instagram to like for an episode, I get like 5 bot comments on it, like because of hashtag or
I've seen those. You should post this on whatever page over and over and over
for a shout out. And it's just no. And so like, I think some of the SoundCloud, I don't think many, because then you go down and look at, like where you can break down the analytics into like where they're listening from. And occasionally there's like some weird stuff like Latvia or something. I'm like, there's no Navy people in Latvia, I don't think.
That you know of.
But not, but it's not many listens. So it's like, I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, it's significant. And it keeps going up. Right. So like, I think over the last 12 months, it's been like 85,000, which is way up from like every year it goes up and up and up. So it's like, and it's still not like insane, but it's like, considering my niche. Size. Yeah. Considering my niche, it's not bad.
Right. Cause it's not just like people in the Navy, right? Like you have to find somebody in the Navy who cares enough about talking about the Navy or listening about the Navy or leadership development or like how many people are really diving in to go do that, right? Like half of Reddit and Facebook groups are just full of people talking about how much they hate their chief. So
I can't imagine a lot of those. I've pulled a lot of people in by posting the episodes on Reddit and getting engaged in some of those threads. And like, I'm on Discord and I talk to those guys. And so I think because a lot of the people, especially on Reddit, like the people you're talking about, they have a really negative reaction. Like it's just vitriol when I post an episode. Like I posted the how to make chief kind of one. I posted the video there and it just within 7 seconds and it said like, get fat. And like was the first comment. Yeah. And so it was like, and it's like, I think it's funny too. So I'm just like laughing at it. But I've pulled a lot. I think I've like converted a lot of people like where, what'll happen is they'll roast me. And then before I even get there, a lot of times a bunch of listeners will jump into the comments and be like, no, you actually need to listen to this. Like, this isn't what you think it is. And they'll defend me. And so I've actually pulled a lot of people onto the podcast that way too, like guests and like people I consider good friends now that I pulled in through Reddit. But yeah, I mean, it's grown a lot. I still feel like I kind of don't know how big it is exactly. But I know it's growing and I know, it's a significant number of listens. Like within the first week, an episode usually does about 500 and then it just slowly ticks up over time. Cause like you'll go back and look at like a week's analytics and it'll have like 5 episodes with a couple hundred listens. So it just like snowballs over time. So like within a month you're at like 1,000-ish and then it just keeps going up. But yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of people, I think the majority of the growth has been word of mouth because I've noticed a lot of growth during chief seasons, right? Like chief selects and chiefs are telling their chief selects to listen to it. And I have all the Initiation Chronicle stuff and the Teaching of the Creed stuff. So it's like, there's a lot of resources for that audience too.
Well, yeah, but based on your niche too, right? That's the time that you have that the Navy has decided to dedicate towards leadership development. And the Navy has more or less said, right? Like, I know this isn't really what they have said, but in practice, they have said, hey, we set aside 6 weeks for you guys to care about leadership training. That's it. And so as a podcast that's dedicated to that, if somebody's sitting there banging their head against the wall for 6 weeks, like, I don't get this. And they're a podcast person, they're going to look for this and they're going to look for something like that. And I know that there are others that exist. I know we've talked about them before, but I've never I've literally never given any of them a chance. Yeah. And so I have no data on anything. I can't comment.
Some of it, I don't know what their statistics are. I'll probably ask them offline because I'm going to record with them soon on their podcast. But the only guys I've seen that have gotten a similar positive response, and they seem to be getting a lot more traction pretty quickly, is the Permission to Speak Freely guys. Like, they had just started out when I found them. I think somebody might have suggested them to me. And then and I'm not taking credit for any of their growth or anything, but I brought them on as guests.
Is that Damo?
I'm sure Damo and Damon, like, I'm sure like some of our listeners, but like, I've had a couple people thank me for the episode because it turned them on to them. But like lately, like, I mean, they're cranking out episodes. They've been doing YouTube and stuff. So I'm sure that helped them grow a lot, but they're the only one in that niche that I'm aware of that seems to be doing really well.
Dude, I'm the worst with this too, because I've never listened to any of theirs. Like, we did a Goats After Dark with Damo, and that's when I, pseudo met him as much as you can meet anybody in 2022. But so that's when I heard of them, and I feel bad because it's not like against them or like,
everybody has so much to consume. It's
not my, exactly.
There's so much to possibly pay attention to everything,
Like, but I always joke, like, I give you a hard time that I feel bad half the time.
I don't listen to that many.
Hardly any of yours. I barely listen to them because I'm so far behind with so many others that I listen to.
Right.
And so a lot of them, like some of them, if they're story based, if it's like a 10 episode mini series, as soon as that comes out, that takes precedence. But then if it's an hour and a half and I've only got a 10 to 15 minute car ride to work, like, that takes me all week to get through.
Right. And it's like,
and then by then I'm behind on 4 others. And so
and it's like,
I feel bad because
them and Jeff too, like, he puts out 90 podcasts a week. I'm like, I can't keep up with this dude. So like, I listen to them occasionally. Like,
I keep meaning to listen to Jeff more often because I don't, we've done one with him before also, but I don't know that I've listened to any of just his, and it's not because I don't want to by any means. It's just, again, like, all that stuff. And then honestly, as bad as a lot of this sounds, is there's burnout just like everybody else. Like, I'm in the Navy. I'm there all day. I deal with it. I know what I like and don't like.
I get burned out on this sometimes. Like, I get it.
And then when I come home and it's like, I don't want to keep listening to and about the Navy while I'm leaving the Navy for the day. Like, I'm trying to go home. I'm trying to listen to not Navy. Like, maybe I do want to listen to people shooting mooses and taking micro dosing and like, something
just
totally
something
different.
Stupid. Yeah.
But like, I can't, but there is some interest to it because, like many wives, mine is not the most stoked about me coming home and trying to talk to her about like leadership philosophy or some random, it's like, cool. So, also you need to take care of the kids right now. We need dinner and then they need to take a bath. And like, I'm not trying to sit there and be like, yeah, but have you heard of the Peter Principle? And like,
it's a great book, dude.
But so like, it's interesting because, in a profession that so many of us do for such a large portion of our lives, even if it's only 4 years, like those, even if you only did 4 years and then you get out, those 4 years are not 4 years at Taco Bell. They're a different kind of 4 years, And so doing that, and then also somehow having the mental space and energy to devote to listening to a podcast from people that are almost unanimously hated, or at least jokingly hated in the Navy, from a couple of chiefs. You know what I mean? Like,
you're not wrong. I don't,
what bitter, angry second class is like, oh, my chiefs are idiots. I'm going to go listen to this podcast. From
but they chiefs. Do, though. But they do.
They do.
Those
but
people
that's
are real.
That's what I was getting to, though.
About 8,000 a week.
Part. That's the craziest part to me, is that number is where it's at. Not because I don't think you deserve it, but it's like, it's surprising that many people, however many it is,
it's a diverse crowd too. Like, it's not all Navy. Like, I've had There's a bunch of coasties listening. I've corresponded with a bunch of Coast Guardsmen. That charge we just did was for a master sergeant in the Space Force. So it's like
Space Force, baby,
going through the chief season, but like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think like I picked up some
going.
Yeah. I see what you did there. But the coasties, I think I picked up because I went on this, they had to go out, or I had those guys on, or both. I think I did both. And then like I've picked up, I don't know if there's any Marines, but I've picked up like, there's one dude that's like a civilian logistics dude that like works with the Navy, but he's never been in the military. So there's some random people that when I got an email or a DM or something, I'm like, you're listening to me? Like, all right, this is a little odd, but whatever. Like it's cool. And it's like, I mean, it's all, leadership stuff. So I guess it translates.
All that stuff's mostly good, because I imagine that's still, I mean, the general leadership stuff, I think about it all very differently. Like during the chief season, I look at things differently after talking to you and going through the podcast and stuff, of how, I don't know, like the message that I'm trying to send or portray, or like, focusing on like what's important, or what am I really trying to get out of this, or what do I want them to get out of this? It's definitely shaped my view on those things. I would hope for the better. And not necessarily always for the party line. And it is what it is. Right. And that's kind of the point. And I think we talk about that plenty, but it's interesting to me seeing how, like, when I think about it more, and when I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just, we haven't done an episode in a while, I'll call this dude up, and or even like we've talked plenty where we don't do
where we didn't just record,
catch up. And
I have a whole episode for like 3 hours that was just such rambling garbage that I was just like, I'm not even going to publish this. It was just I feel like catching up. I'm not going to lie.
I feel like that's how 85% of our episodes are.
No, I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff that is relevant for the audience, but then that one episode, I mean, it wasn't even an episode. It was like we recorded, but I didn't even use it because it was just,
we were talking about 90% of the time
that was unrelated.
Yeah, no, 90% of the time I tell you that too. Like if we're just going to catch up, and you're like,
I'll record it, and then it's like, if I can use it, I use it. If I don't, whatever. Who cares?
And I'm like, just stop, because now I feel weird when I see the red thing going in the corner.
It doesn't matter.
I know. So then what's your end goal with this? What's your, like, at what point will you feel like I am done, or do you have that yet? Or are you just still kind of rolling with it? Or
I'm kind of rolling with it. I would say I have a spectrum of like what I'm kind of aiming for and what I think's realistic, I guess. It's like I have a lot of ideas and hopes and whatever about where I think I want to end up. And it's like it's some conglomeration or like dream vision board or whatever of like,
right.
So I'm going to start posting on YouTube more. And I don't know. I mean, I think it'll primarily just be the episodes with the video now. And I'll do some of the instructional stuff like I did with the How to Make Chief, I guess. But I'm probably going to get away from a lot of that now that I'm retired, because I'm not going to be up on all that stuff anymore.
As in touch.
And it expires too. Like I did the first Chiefs package one, and some of the information's not accurate anymore just because this stuff changes. Right. So the YouTube stuff will be a bigger thing now. That's kind of like one of my next steps. Is I'm like literally earlier today, I'm like learning how to make the YouTube intro that I'm really proud of. I don't know how I figured it out.
Right.
And then like how to chop together a YouTube video. And right now I'm using like iMovie, and then that'll evolve probably to like whatever the Adobe
Pro Tools or something
Pro or Final Cut or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But like,
Final Cut.
I'm in the infancy of like the YouTube stuff. So I'm really focused on that right this second. And I really do want to, I feel bad because I have, like 30 or 40 people that subscribe to the Substack so far, and I haven't published anything in months. But I want to get back into writing too. I eventually would love to write a book. John Rennie, who I'm going to go on his podcast soon too, talked to me offline about a bunch of like how he wrote all these books. He's written like 3 or 4 books, and how it's like, he's not a New York Times bestseller, but like he generates a lot of revenue doing that.
There's a market.
Like, yeah. And so like, I'm looking at it like what I would really like to do is just kind of create this ecosystem of leadership development resources. I want the podcast to stay completely free. At most, they'll catch an ad like the DGUTS apparel one I do, or something else like that. And then I started a Patreon that I just launched yesterday. And so I'm trying to get it, like, I'm trying to create revenue streams without like making it gross and without taking away the existing value. Like the podcast itself will always be free. There will never be any premium content, like podcasts that you don't get access to or anything. I just don't like that idea. But then like with Substack, go ahead.
And I'll say, have you thought about stuff like, I know, we talked about Jeff doing like, or I know that he does, I don't know how regularly or how often, but he's done like kind of guest speaker, public speaker type things. Yeah. Have you thought about stuff like that? Like, yes, especially because in your area, right? You have,
I've been asked to do it in my area, and I said no because I was still on active duty. I was like, I'll do it remotely within like an hour
radius, right? You have like a whole lot of messes basically in an hour radius if you include the entire sound,
right?
And Everett and all that stuff. So like, have you thought about kind of as a service of like, hey, I'll come and do, whether it's a training or a like, let's just sit down and BS and you guys complain and let me tell you why you're wrong, or however, like, because I feel like totally you kind of have to spin and practice that, to some extent. So you have something to go off of, but, or some sort of like presented package.
I could argue.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's my jam is like extemporaneous speaking. Like, let's go. Like,
because you could be like, hey, how about, like say, hire me for a Sailor 360 training, right? And I'll come out there and tell you why all of your chiefs suck and why
they don't.
Or, you know what I mean? Like,
so yes is the short answer. Like I talked to, so John Rennie does that too, and I talked to him about like, hey, how do you like get to a point where people are asking you to do stuff like that? Because I'm like, as I'm retiring, like I would be down to do that. I like the idea more of doing some kind of like training or team building or whatever, like that kind of a thing with like a mess or like a group of first classes. But if somebody wanted me to stand on a stage and talk, like I'd probably do it, depending on the audience. Like I don't want to do it for a bunch of randos, but like I'd probably do that kind of stuff. And I got to figure out how I'll probably end up putting it on the website. And he said one of the ways that he got out kind of the word, like it sort of started by accident. And then like a buddy of his just asked him to do it. And then he put it in his books, like that he's available for speaking engagements and on his website. And then it just kind of started to happen. And then word of mouth plus that, I guess I don't know how often he does it, but so, yeah, I mean, I've been asked to do a bunch of stuff. Like I've had, there's some CT chiefs that want me to come to Hawaii for chief for the khaki ball or something. And then,
sounds rough.
I know. Right. And then I've been like,
go party with a bunch of chiefs.
And for Hawaii, that, like for them, what's weird is like, if chiefs are asking me to do it, I'm just like, just buy me a plane ticket and give me somewhere to crash and I'll do it. Like, I feel weird a hotel charging room. Them. Like, I don't need a hotel. Like, cause that's how Jeff does that, is like, he's just like, just get me there and give me somewhere to crash, give me a ride to the venue and a ride to the airport, and I'm good. Like, I don't need your mess to pay me or anything. Like, so I feel like that's how that would go.
Well, you understand also from obviously being in it for so long, like we're not exactly cash cows, like
exactly
with as much as you see like burger burns and donut sales and gas and glass and all this other stuff, like we're not exactly rolling in cash.
Right. And so like, I think right now my focus is like the slow growth of just doing other things. Like, I want to get to 2 podcasts a week. And like right now I'm a little ahead. Like I'll release this one on Wednesday, but
for like a month.
Well, I'm probably going to release, if I can't get the YouTube video how I want it, I'll probably just record a spin the yard really quick. But I have I'm trying to get more ahead, right? And then I want to get to a point where I'm doing 2 a week, but I don't know what that's going to look like quite yet. And then YouTube, I want to like get more active with that. And then get a little better at social media, because I know that's a thing I need to grow and whatever, even though I hate it. And then Substack, I want to get into writing a lot more. And that's almost like a sandbox for the book eventually. Like I think it would be very cool. And I don't even know why, man. I got all these old books behind me and I just look at like these old like Blue Jackets manuals and stuff like that. And I'm just like, there's something really cool about that, where I'm like, I just want to write a book. I just think it'd be cool. Like, I don't even know why, like if it's the best idea, but, so I want to do that. And then I've thought a lot about, like some type of a curriculum that could be delivered like via YouTube Premium, or maybe I get to a point where I can like design some stuff to be digested through Blackboard or whatever, some type of like an online curriculum. No idea what it would look like or how I would deliver it, any of those things. That's kind of like a chalkboard idea that I'd like to grow to. And then beyond that, dude, like I really have no idea. Like I kind of big picture pie in the sky idea, like kind of saw it going maybe towards like a leadership consulting thing. Like Jocko and all those guys, they have a leadership consulting company called Echelon Front. And then he does all his other stuff. And it's like, I don't know if I want to run a company, but like, I mean, I kind of already am, but it's just me. But like, you know what I mean? Like with employees and like a schedule, and I'm like traveling.
That's what I was going to say is my thought for whatever it is I feel like you have so many different avenues that you should pursue as one person, right? Who is still going to have another job. Yeah. That you don't have the ability to do all those things.
Exactly. So that's where
I think
weird.
that a lot of it, like, that's where I think that rather than you being the sole voice, right?
I'm accepting auditions. I think I
told you, I told you, I think I've told you this before, but maybe it's in my head. But either way, just for transparency's sake, I think that, and anybody can tell me that I'm way wrong, I think you should still do Spin the Yarns. And then you can focus on your writing. I think other people should do the interview portion of it. Yeah. And so that somebody can knock out a lot of these interviews that you want to get done, with anybody that's interested in whatever else. Yeah. I think you should have your Spin the Yarn side of it, and then there was something else. There was like another facet.
Yeah. So like
the problem though is that now you're going to have to go beyond just you, and you're going to have 2 or 3 other people that are working with you or helping you do it.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I for a long time, I was trying to get people, it almost treat it like an audio blog, like where, like, cause you did it the one time where you recorded an episode with your buddy, the LDO guy. And it's like, I was trying to get, like at one point I was talking to a CT chief, and she was, using the podcast for Sailor 360, and she would like, hey, listen to this podcast and then we'll discuss it at training. And what I was trying to get her to like have them discuss a topic as a podcast, like basically kind of like record their Sailor 360 or something, or like some version of that. But I wanted like, I want contributors, kind of like a magazine or a blog or a newspaper or whatever, where it's not just me. And I like scratched the surface with like Andrew and Paul did one of the foundations when Andrew's in school, but it's like Andrew's busy. He just finished all his officer stuff, like his schools and stuff. And so now he's on his way to go figure out how to be an officer on his first ship, the first ship he's ever been on in his whole naval career. And he was a corpsman chief when he commissioned. So it's like, he did FMF things and like clinics. So he's never been on anything Hayes Gray. So it's like, it's like the people that are excited about doing it and very capable about doing it are still active duty Navy. So it's like, it's really hard. Like I was a Kool-Aid drinking true believer that just decided that this was important enough to me that I did it for 7 years of my active duty time. But it's like, I was also single and no kids for the majority of that. And like, my wife is like, I mean, we're together, but it's like, I don't have the demands on my time that you have. Yeah. And so it's like, I understand.
What I mean is like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it's just you, as in it was just when you had the time to record.
Exactly.
You could set that side aside. You could set that time aside, as opposed to if I was, say I was trying to meet up with not you and somebody else who has a normal life. I couldn't be like, hey, wait till my kids go to bed.
Right.
They're going to be like, hey, this is when I'm available. And then I have to tell my wife like, hey, sorry, I know I'm home and it's, Saturday afternoon, but I got to go do this thing. And so I understand it is a lot on other people, but I guarantee you can't be the only person that's passionate enough to
I'm, again, like I'm always soliciting for like people to come on the podcast, to contribute, to be involved, to whatever, because I was trying to get you to do it for a while too. And it's like, you're too damn busy. Like, I get it. And it's like, cause you were like, I want to start a podcast. I'm like, or hear me out. You could just record episodes for me and I'll publish them. And I don't need you to do it on a schedule. Just do it when you have time to do it and then send it to me. And so I would really like to almost become like the editor in chief and sometimes contributor. But I need people to be the contributors. And so far I haven't really been able to accomplish that. So like,
I can think of at least 2 other people that as soon as the season is over,
send them my way. Send them my way.
Whether or not it's with or without you, I wanted to talk to them.
Oh yeah, totally, dude. And it's like,
to see
if you want. I want to see. You have carte blanche permission to record with whoever the hell you want and send it to me. And it's like, and I'm gonna listen to a little bit of it, but I pretty much just trust you to do it. And it's like, same like if Andrew sends me a Foundations episode, I don't even listen to it anymore. I just post it because I know he's gonna do a good job. So it's like, I just like because like the first one or two, like the first one was rough, the second one was way better, and then the third one I was just like, I don't even like. I listened to a little bit. I'm like, this is good, and then it's I'll build that rapport with whoever it is, but like there's not a lot of people I wouldn't be willing to hear from, or like. I mean, dude, if there's like an articulate, like well thought out idea coming from like an E3, I would publish it. I'm down for doing it with literally anybody, as long as it's the type of stuff that I feel adds value for my audience. And so like, I would very much like for it to become like almost like a town square, public forum, whatever, for these types of discussions. And that's what would be cool too, is if it's not just like one person, it's like people having discussions about something. Like, that's why I think that the PTSF guys do so, like theirs are so good, is because it's 2 of them. They're talking to each other.
Right.
And sometimes they have guests, but like they can just do a podcast where the 2 of them are talking to each other, and it's entertaining. Right. It's good. So yeah.
So then my last, that spawned another question that I had, and then probably last one, cause this is long enough. As many
That's
as them
how
are.
they go, man. That's kind of my MO.
So what's the, I know when you started it, you've mentioned it several times before of who your kind of target audience was and what you had in mind. Right. Has that changed at all? Do you still have the same target audience? And then, how does that compare with what you see as your, like the feedback that you get from listeners?
Yeah.
Is that who is actually listening, or is there like a difference?
I would say my target audience has evolved. Initially I had narrowed it. And it evolved with me too, to be fair. Like, I was a chief proper at the time. I mean, I had been a chief for like 4 years, 5 years, maybe probably 4 years. And so like, I didn't think of myself as somebody that could tell a senior chief how to do a better job of being a senior chief. Yeah. Like, I was aiming strictly at E6 and below. And then over time, as the popularity grew, I got a lot of chiefs that were getting in contact with me saying that, like they really enjoyed it. And, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that thought this way and all this other stuff. So then what I started to realize was I had a lot more, sorry, I'll set this over a lot more chiefs listening than I thought I ever would or did or whatever. But I do have a lot of junior sailors listening too. I would say these dogs, man. Good thing I got a mute button.
Right.
I would say it's probably like I get a lot of chiefs that are interactive, but I think there's still a lot of juniors listening. But I think the audience, my target audience kind of evolved with me because like I'm a master chief now or retired master chief. So it's like I don't feel weird mentoring a brand new master chief. I don't feel weird mentoring any senior chief. You know what I mean? Like, but before I didn't feel like I had the credentials or was qualified to talk to that person that way. Cause like I remember when I did the teaching of the creed stuff, I was a senior chief, but to do, whatever episode I did with Paul, I think it was it wasn't credibility of a chief. It was something, but it was like, maybe it was, I don't remember, but it was an episode where I think it was credibility of a chief. And I was like, I wanted to bring Paul on because I wanted like somebody that was an authority in the Chiefs mess to be the one talking about the thing. And he told me, he's like, you're an authority in the Chiefs. And I was like, yeah, but you know, cause I was just a senior chief, never been a CMC, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I want somebody that like no one can question. Like he was a fleet master chief. He was a heartbeat away from being the McPon. Like this is the dude. Like, and so, but now it's like, I feel very comfortable having those conversations. So, and there's still like a tiny bit of that like imposter syndrome thing in the back of my head. Cause I was never a cop. I was never CMC. So there's dudes out there that would scoff at me, like dispensing this type of
you just doesn't know any better.
Like advice or whatever. Cause I never wore a cookie and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. Like then you're not in the audience, continue like beating your head against the wall and, being out of touch and clueless. But yeah, man, I would say it evolved with me. It didn't change because of who I was getting feedback from. I was really shocked at how many chiefs were listening. It didn't really make sense to me until I kind of understood that those are the people that are looking for it. Like it's really a band from like senior E5s, but less of those, more E6s up through like senior chiefs. And there's some like really junior and some really senior listening, but it's like the center mass is definitely like senior E5s, junior E6s up to like senior chiefs probably. And some there's a lot of JOs that listen to.
Interesting.
So yeah, man, I was surprised by it, but it also kind of makes sense. And as I progressed, it still kind of conforms to my initial target of junior sailors. It's just that definition changed with my own age and experience and rank and all that. So, but yeah, I think I've just grown with it, I guess. But I'm still, and at this point, I kind of feel like because I made Master Chief and then retired. It's like I talked to the everybody's gonna be so excited to hear if they've actually stayed around for this long. The CO, the Murtha, I finally recorded with. And it's like talking to him, it's like I'm talking to a peer, even though I know like he commanded 3 ships. I'm not that guy. I know that. But he talked to me that way too. Like it's like that CO to CMC or CO to Master Chief type conversation. It's like I've had a lot of those conversations. And so now I feel like, I don't know, like I can have those conversations. So it's like, I kind of don't have any limiters on who the audience is now, even though like, I guess I'm just directing it at whoever needs it now, you know, like there's not anything that I'm unwilling to talk about. There was stuff I probably would have stayed away from before because I either didn't feel qualified or credentialed enough or whatever before. And there's also some topics I stayed away from because I was still on active duty and I just didn't want any kind of attention from like somebody in DC or somebody calling my CNC or something. But that I can talk about without that thought.
I know that's been a fear of yours this whole time.
It has,
right?
Yeah. It's never been
an
issue.
Has that ever happened?
No, never once, dude. Like I've had people, I've got the closest thing, which isn't even the same, is I've had people that know me recognize my voice and shoot me a text or something to that effect. Or like I'm out on an SMI and a chief that used to be a first class on my last boat walks up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I really love the podcast." I'm like, "Shut up. Like this is not the time or the place." But outside of that, yeah, no, never, man. Like I definitely, and what's weird is I've heard horror stories, which to be fair, some of those were people that were like coloring way outside the lines with some of it. It was like stuff that would be embarrassing to the Navy, the type of stuff they were talking about. And then, but I've heard of other people like that have done things where it's like their face and name is on it, and maybe it's on YouTube or whatever, where what they were putting out was, I mean, maybe it was like they were doing it as a look at me thing, but also it was like productive. I mean, it was like they were talking about leadership stuff and trying to share knowledge and stuff. It wasn't anything that was like unbecoming or unprofessional or whatever. And they got told to knock it off. And so I was like, I was always worried that because I am critical of a lot of things, I openly criticize the Chiefs mess. I openly criticize like naval leadership and a lot of other programs and everything else. But I don't know. And it's even more weird is I know all those people are listening. Like I know Paul Kingsbury has told me half a dozen times, "Hey, I sent your last episode to all the active fleet master chiefs in the MCPON." I'm like, "Thanks, Paul. Thanks." Like, I mean, like, I know you think you're helping, but like, I'm trying to not be on their radar that much. And then I had he was a fleet master chief. He's no longer. I'm not going to say his name just because I don't want to. I think I've told you who it is though. Like his aide reached out to come onto the podcast, which freaked me out. And I was like, at the time I was still active duty. So, and I said, I was like, I'll do it, but it's not going to be the type of conversation he's used to. I'm going to ask him.
I just remember that. I'm like, who's this bum? If it's the same guy. Not really like that, but it was very much. No, like,
I mean, I was.
Who is this guy? Like, why does he care?
Well, that's kind of what it was. It was like it was almost like it felt like a PR tour or something. Like I'm like, why? Right. Why does he want to come on my podcast? Like, what does he want to talk about? Because I can tell you what I want to talk about. And it's all the questions all the E3 and E4s are afraid to ask at all hands call. I'm going to ask those questions. And I expect him to have like a conversation about it, not just talk to me or talk at me with all this like, you know, verbal
rhetoric,
judo or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, because I'm going to challenge him. And it's like, and I don't want to be a dick about it. I don't want to make him uncomfortable. I don't want to get him in hot water with who I had MCPON or CNO or like, I understand the limitations on that level of thing just enough to know that like, look, man, I know you've got guardrails and like third rails you can't touch and talk about or whatever, which I think is stupid.
You can see how one misspoken thing or one misinterpreted thing turns into a never-ending meme of lower your standards.
Exactly.
So you can understand.
Well, I mean, that hadn't happened yet, but you're not wrong. Like it clearly.
No, but you can understand how I would be that if I was anywhere near that level, I would take that as a lesson of like you.
Oh yeah,
everybody says like,
I don't
words
expect
have meaning and all that.
Any of those
I'd
dudes
be so hesitant.
I don't expect any of those dudes to ever want to come on my podcast because I post my episodes on Reddit. Where do you think all that vitriol started at? Like all those memes came from Reddit. So I'm just like, I mean, I still think that they should have those conversations and do all the things, but like I don't think they should be afraid of it. But I get why they don't. It's self-preservation.
Yeah,
like I get it, but
I don't know how much.
There's risk.
How much they
involved.
Would gain from that, though.
I think they gain a lot if they were willing to have real conversations, but they're not.
Yeah, but to your point that you kind of already said, I don't know how much they can.
Right. I don't know what they're allowed to do.
Some of it.
Yeah.
Whether they're allowed to or not, or like.
Yeah.
The problem is that one of the things that I've figured out, being in, I'm at 16 years or a couple months shy.
Yeah.
But when you do things, right, there's like that big piece of you don't have the time or the ability really to explain to everybody as to how or why what you mean or what you're saying or what you're doing, because there's just so many factors in play. It's not that you can't because it's a secret. Right. It's like, I don't have a day and a half to explain to you why we had to change the watch bill.
Right.
Like none of this is a secret, but it's just like, we had to change it. Just I'm sorry, it sucks or whatever. Right. And there's, bits and pieces that you explain and they're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would this person do that? And then you got to go into that. And then it's just, it takes so much to explain.
Yeah.
And that's just at my level is what I mean. I'm not saying that people don't deserve it, but what I mean is that at my level, it's hard. That much to explain. So imagine it's someone like, if you were to get the current MCPON on and you ask him something crazy, like, why are we changing uniforms again or something, right?
But why are we changing? And you can direct me to the guy that can answer the question. It doesn't, because that's my thing is like that type of a question.
But that doesn't help,
maybe
right?
Not a MCPON question. But you know what I mean? Because that was kind of some of his, I think some of his frustration with how that all hands call went was like, most of the stuff he was getting asked about aren't MCPON questions. Those are your CMC and your next echelon up CMC questions and COs and admirals, whatever.
But then how do you explain that without trying to say that they suck?
I'll look into it. Way, right? I don't know. That sounds terrible.
No,
I'll look into it.
But you know what I mean?
I'm going to have to go talk to some CMCs.
If you're bringing somebody on, if you're bringing somebody on for a podcast like this or for an interview or something, that those questions are going to come. And then even saying things like, I don't know, I'll look into it, it's going to get interpreted as this guy's clueless. Or, I got to go talk to some CMCs. It's going to get interpreted as that CMC must be all screwed up. And that it could. You know what I mean? And then
maybe they are screwed up.
All of that. I'm just saying the way that all
I
that's
get it. Yeah, I get it. I just... I think there's a way to do it where, because when I talk to people and they ask me hard questions, I went on Test Step podcast and he asked me how I felt about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I have feelings about it, but it's I'm not some kind of expert that can that can talk about it in an intelligent way. But I answered him, and I answered him in the best way that I could. But it's how I get when people ask me for a definitive answer on certain things, and I'm like, well, it depends, or it's complicated, or it depends on the context. There's ways to caveat things, or put a some type of context around it. When I answer your question, it's not lower your standards, which isn't even what he said. It's it got interpreted that way because of all of the stuff that he said around that. And and it's if he had just more deftly navigated that, it would have been fine. It was just my CMC at the time. He's still a CMC there, but I'm retired now. He explained it to me. If I talked to him 3 days after that happened, and he explained to me as I don't think he meant it the way that it was taken, but the way basically the way that he did say it was tone deaf. And that's, it was clearly not well thought out and well executed. So, it happens, but I think he could have just done a way better job.
I just mean that if I were say the current MCPON, that instance, if anything, is a huge red flag of why you shouldn't go do any of those interviews, because something could come out the wrong way unintentionally.
Passionately disagree. I think if you're going to be that guy, you should be equipped to have those conversations. You should be. So don't put your foot in your mouth.
You should be equipped for those things. But what I mean is that you open yourself up to unnecessary. It's different at an all hands call. That's kind of part of the job, right? Doing an interview on DGUTS podcast, no offense, is not part of the job. So that's not where I would go open myself up.
Sure. I don't disagree with that as a concept. I do think that it's his only job to basically advocate for and communicate to enlisted people. That's kind of the whole point. You're the figurehead, dude. You're the king, dirty enlisted man. So go advocate for, which I know that they're largely doing, I think. And they communicate
You're the
to
head
us.
Hatchet slinger.
Cause I don't think does he need to come on my podcast? Absolutely not. Should he have a podcast or a YouTube thing or both that isn't cringy and completely useless, that would communicate to sailors exactly what's going on? Is it hey, tomorrow I'm going to go talk to the whatever they do, testify in front of Senate or whatever, and I'm going to advocate for the following things? Because one of the things that seemed Russ was kind of frustrated by was like he has like spent a bunch of time advocating for like it's like a bunch of childcare centers or something, like something that's really important to a lot of enlisted sailors, but we have no idea what the dude is doing. Like how I don't know that you're doing that. Why don't you tell me? Like, and it doesn't have to be a debate between a guy like me and the MCPON. It could just be an MC2 asking canned pre-screened questions, but them giving like an actual useful, like well thought out answer with some meat on the bone that like, oh, now I feel like I actually know what's going on. You know what I mean? And I think that is very, very within their capability and responsibility.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest with you.
I just wonder if that at some point that's, I don't know. I'm trying to look at it from the other view of like how that could be looked at negatively. And the biggest thing that I could think of immediately is how self-serving it would sound of like, look at all this important stuff that I'm doing. And like, you should appreciate me more.
Could do it in a way. Cause that's how I came into this was like, I had that fear of like coming across that way. And so I did and I probably did a lot more than I needed to, but I did all the things that I could think of to, like mitigate that. But then you got guys like when Grant Kahn first started posting his videos on Reddit about mental health awareness and suicide prevention and all that stuff, he was doing it in his freaking dress blues. So it's like, you can do it clearly. And like, you can do it in a way that communicates you care. That dude is a minor celebrity, dude. Like he can't walk across a Navy base without getting flagged down and like thanked for helping save my life. Like, so he put a bunch of time and effort into doing a thing that even when I first saw his video, and I told him this when we talked, like when I first saw the video on Reddit, I was like, oh, look at this, look at me project, you know? And then I listened to it and I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. And I need to talk to him. So I'm like, it very much could be accomplished. Like if Grant can go on to Reddit, which is like a Shark Tank, post those videos and become like a cult hero on Reddit by doing it as a chief, like, come on, dude. Like it's not as hard as people make it out to be to authentically communicate something and do it through the filter of making sure they know that like you actually care about them and providing them value. Like it's not that difficult because Grant didn't just do it. Like he did it better than anyone's ever done it. So it's like, and that's not why he was doing it, which is kind of why it worked, right? Like he went there to legitimately help people and that's it. And he put himself out there to do it. And that's what I didn't get at first. Like I didn't think that was the move because I was leaning more into like the stereotype of these cynical, salty sailors that hate chiefs, of which those are more my target audience, but they're his too. Kind of like the ones that are jaded and angry are the ones that are going to go down a dark path. And Grant was reaching out to them wearing his freaking dress blues in a video, like clean shaven, good looking dude in his dress blues talking to you about. And it's like, it would be really easy to make that type of a comment or take that swipe. But I'm sure people did, but vast majority are like throwing rose petals at that dude's feet and like rightly so.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think it's that tall of an ask for these guys they just, like in your mind, it's a tall ask because you're kind of assuming that these guys aren't that concerned with the same thing. Like they're not that concerned about adding value to your everyday life. Like the cynic in all of us, based on our experiences in the military, it's like we all think that to an extent that those people in those leadership positions like don't really have our best interests at heart. And it's like, I mean, to an extent, I think that's like still that like a lot of people in leadership positions either like didn't care about me more of like in a Thanos, I don't even know your name type of way versus like less of like I hate this guy and I'm going to make his life hurt on purpose kind of way. But I've had people that I think like behind closed doors, like genuinely disliked me and went out of their way to make my life hurt that were in those positions. So it's like, those are things that I still believe are real. And I think a lot of people attach that type of, baggage to the people in those positions. Cause it's like, everybody just assumes you have to wade through some like morally questionable pathways to get to those positions in the first place. So I don't know, man. I think they could do it, whether or not they're willing or genuinely like capable based on their character and what their goals are. Like, I don't know. I think some people want to get to the mountaintop just so they can, spend 3 years jet setting around the Navy with a crown on. I don't know if that's everybody, but
I don't know. Like I said, I just look at the risk versus reward from that position. And I think that that's the reason there is no MCPON or CNO podcast, regular vlog, regularly scheduled thing, because it would have to be run within the Navy. You couldn't have an external entity do it.
Sure.
Because then you lose control over the message. And I do think that would be an awesome project for somebody who works in whatever capacity. I don't even know. I know.
Hire me as a GS remotely. I got you, fam. I got you.
I don't know enough about like the Navy MC world of like what the echelon or what command would be in charge of doing something like that.
They have the capability and expertise to do a really good job.
There are people that are out there that if that's a thing that could be pitched to the right people of like, say fleets and above, and every week is a different person, and it takes half an hour of their time. It doesn't have to be this crazy long, drawn out DGUTS nonsense.
3 hours rambling.
All right. So then last question, then I'm going to go to bed for the first time in like a reasonable-ish hour.
I like it.
Hit me with a quote. Like what's a one that you like, inspires you, you think is hilarious, something, I don't know, something that gets you by, right? Like if you were the quote at the bottom of your email signature line kind of guy.
I'm not that guy at all.
I know you're not. If you were that kind of guy, right? Like what would that quote be?
Yeah. I mean, the one I go back to probably the most is there's and I'm going to paraphrase it. I think I'll get pretty close. It basically says in Extreme Ownership, the Jocko Willink book, and Leif Babin, it's like, which it was like that book more than he's written a million books, but that book more than anything else is like, it's the best one, and it's a really, really great resource. But there's a quote in there that I use a lot, like when I was like writing papers for school and stuff, because the degree was leadership, so it was like. It basically says leadership is the solution to everything. And like the way that it's phrased is the greatest single, I think it says like reason or variable or something, like the greatest single reason for a team's success or failure is leadership. And they told like the sea story basically of being in Buds, where they had a boat teams where they're like paddling over the surf or whatever. And they had one where like they had one with all the big jock dudes, and they had one of like all the tiny guys, and the tiny guys had a good leader, and the big like strong gorillas had a bad leader. And so they were, or it might've been the other way around. I think at first the small guys had a bad leader. And so they're like, oh, well, they're failing because they're small guys and they just can't keep up physically or whatever. So I don't remember if it was Jocko or someone else. Like he might have been in Buds when this happened, but one of the Buds instructors like swapped the leaders, and then all like because the big guys were just crushing everybody. And when he moved the good leader over to the little guy's boat, the little guys started murdering everybody. And so I'm just like it's a thing that I say a lot, and I really passionately feel is true, is that like. Every single thing that I've discussed on this podcast, to me, in my analysis, whether it's something I'm an expert on or something I have very little expertise on, I almost always come back to, and I honestly can't think of an example where I wouldn't at least partially come back to the answer of like I can solve this with leadership. And it's not the only thing, but it's like when you look at a lot of the things that happen negatively, it's like tracing it all the way back honestly to a root cause. There's a failure in leadership at the very beginning of whatever that problem was, whether it's needs of a junior sailor not being met and not being able to function as a result, right? Like, and that was where I got a lot of my pushback as a leader of I don't want to just send him a mast and punch him in the face and move on with life. Like, hey, we fixed it because we did the discipline thing. It's like, I want to know what went wrong
all, like, how did we get here at all? And like pull that string all the way back to the beginning, find out what the root cause was and fix the root cause so that we don't end up back here again. And so like, that is what that quote like means to me is it's just, the leadership is a solution to everything, in that like, it's always leadership's fault. It's always we're always the ones that are accountable no matter what happens, whether or not that accountability is all mine or just a small amount of it's mine because this guy just made a decision to do something ridiculously stupid. But still, like, and this might be malicious compliance on my part, but even when it's like,
you could argue the extreme.
I can always argue my way into some type of culpability as that person's leader. And I always do. It might be 5% instead of 95%, depending on the scenario. But no matter what, I can trace that back to, I could have done a better job. And that's kind of like the basis for my whole point of view, like the way that I approach leadership in every way. It's just that it's like, it's the solution to pretty much everything.
Fairly objectively, I think that the Navy agrees with you, because when something bad happens on a boat, right? It's not like they don't come in and fire entire crews from E6 and below, right?
Right.
You pick a couple out of, really it's the triad. And I would say that a lot of that has to do with practicality. It's harder to replace 100 some odd people, but regardless, like they don't come down there. Like when we, like on my first boat, my CO got relieved. We had a close CPA with another ship. Big issue. On submarine, we're basically got too close to somebody else that we shouldn't have. And it is super reductive way of explaining the whole scenario. However, as most scenarios that are going to get a CO fired are going to be pretty complicated beyond something like that simple. But when that happened, right, like the CO wasn't driving the boat, he's not the guy on the con. He wasn't the dude making these decisions. He wasn't the one who prepped the charts. Sure, he signed off on. He didn't. None of that stuff was directly him, right? He could have been on the toilet and he would have been fired. At that point, he probably would have been fired for being on the toilet instead, right? But there's you know what I mean? There's always going to come back to like, I realize you didn't pull the trigger, but this is still your fault,
right?
And that always happens, because even the Navy looks at it going, hey, somewhere you allowed this to happen as a leader, or whatever.
But it's like it's a superficial way of approaching it. Cause like it's an inch wide. It's an inch deep and a mile wide. It's the kind of thing where it's like, they're firing the leadership largely just to make the appearance of accountability less actually drill down and find. Because if it were the case that they wholeheartedly agreed with me and were actively like trying to fix what was really wrong, you wouldn't have a rash of CO, XO, and CMC firings on the cover of the Navy Times every single year, right? There would be some type of improvement where we're not doing the same thing over and over again. So it's like, I don't think that I think they superficially agree with me, but I think the way in which they actually accomplish accountability doesn't solve anything.
Well, that's the hard part though, right? Is that you have a constant batch in the Navy of people turning over new people, right? 5 years from now, the whole entire Navy is new CMCs, new triads. 5 years from now, whole new set of triads that exist. And
none of them have been properly educated or developed. So like,
and our system hasn't changed in that, that aspect, not massively at least. And then, but so obviously there's going to be a lot of repeat customer, or not repeat customers, but like repeat issues, because, we say the same thing. Like, I swear last year we just talked to all these students about this, but like at an A school, we have 1,200 students, but next year it's a brand new 1,200, and when you look more granularly, depending on the rate, some of them were only there for like 3 months, and then it's a brand new whole department, that whole division of students is different 3 months from now. And they, those instructors are like, I swear I'm telling everybody to clean their room every day, and they don't get any better with it. And it's like, you are, because every day
it's transient. The whole population is transient. Yeah.
Right. And so, but it's the same thing, just slightly wider view, right? Across the Navy is how many people, like, I have no idea what the numbers are like, but how many people are qualifying or taking command for the first time as the CMC every year. Right. There's probably 10 times more than what you see on the cover. And so it's like, oh man, this guy got fired for sleeping with a junior sailor again, and it's like, yeah. And it's like, why didn't they learn that? And it's like, I'm sure they heard about that, but like, they haven't lived that lesson, and there will always be next batch.
There will always be some, and there will you're never going to get to a perfect record kind of thing. But
the Navy is, that, and the Navy is built on like constant and permanent upward progression. Or getting out, right? Nobody's meant to like, oh, you made chief? Cool. You can go be the sonar chief forever. And then if so, you would never hear of sonar chiefs doing anything bad, because the second you get good at it, they're like, hey, you're now the department chief. Hey, here's a cob card. Hey, here's this. Hey, go work on this. Now you're a CMC. And they're like, can I just go back to being
can I just be my chief? Job? Like, that's what I mean. Like, so when we talked earlier, like I spent my entire second chief's tour as a department chief that I didn't do my job. I did everything and it was ridiculous. And it's like, what are we doing? And it's
but I mean, that's just the way the Navy operates. The way the Navy's built is that constant progression and pushing people to their potential. But so when you do that, and the way that rat race is built, you're going to have people that, progress through something that they should have learned at an earlier stage in life. Which, not to go down a whole new topic path, but that's like the constant argument of like, hey, should there be year minimums basically for people to make chief? Every chief season it comes out, somebody's like, I heard there's a chief,
but also
in 7 years. Is they really experienced enough to be a chief at this point? Like, but also, I didn't make it till I was 18 years.
I think they should get rid of a lot of the higher tenure and up and out type stuff where it's like there's got to be a line somewhere, I suppose, but why do I care if I have like a 35-year-old seaman that's been doing it for 10 years if they're really good at it? Like, and that if they're really good at it, part's important. Cause like what I think you'd find is instead
the Navy would save so much money.
Instead of forcing people into positions of leadership, you're going to find that maybe it takes them longer, but like you get somebody at like 25 years that's okay, I'll be a cob now. You know what I mean? Like I'm interested in leader. I'm mature enough. I feel like I have enough experience. I've seen it done well so many times, blah, blah, blah. I think you'd get less of like, I knew a guy that I worked with that he was going to his third boat as a cob. So like he barely did a boot chief tour, came to shore duty as a senior chief qualified cob, went back to sea as a cob. And I'm like, this guy sucks. Like, I'm sorry. He's not a bad guy, but he's not.
He just doesn't know anything.
He's his heart's in the right place. He's a good person. He's a good dude and he's really revved up to do it well. So I'd like to think that with that intent, he'll find the right path eventually. But I can tell you, like, I bumped heads with this guy a bunch of times because he would just say and do things with sailors that didn't make any sense. And when I would come chin check him, because I was senior to him, he would like argue with me. And then once he realized that I wasn't going to back down and I was like, I still believed I was right and he was wrong, he would do this weird roundabout thing where he would like, in like a 30-second to a minute time frame, would start saying what I was saying. And they'd be like, yeah, no, I mean, that's what I've been saying. I think we're saying the same thing. And I'm like, 2 seconds ago, you were not saying the same thing, which is why I'm yelling at you. But like, it was the type of dude that I'm just like, you don't have enough experience being a chief and being in the type of leadership positions that set you up for that type of a job, where you can do it well and where you don't end up, because there's always going to be character flawed people that end up in the position somehow that are going to be the acute, ridiculous misbehavior type things that end up on the cover of the Navy Times. But the ones that a lot of the times, because I was talking to John Cordell about this, he's got a good article about it, about, I forget the exact, it's like something about treating these like fired COs as if they're like disposable or something like that. I can't remember the title of the article, but if you just search him on USNI, you'll find all his articles. And he's got this one about fired COs, and it's not the ones that do that stuff on the cover of the Navy Times. Mm-hmm. It's like the lost confidence in their ability to command ones based on like near misses or like close CPAs or whatever, where he was basically saying that they're removing these people from command and they're basically pariahs that are told that they have to like go away and retire instead of allowing them
because you didn't ace it first time up.
Like you didn't ace the test first time up. So you go away, you piece of crap. And so like his whole article was about like these people have like been in the Navy for a really long time. They have a lot of valuable skills. There's a lot of good they could do in the Navy. Maybe it's not in the command pipeline anymore, or maybe depending on the circumstance, they get like a second shot. Cause that was the story of my favorite Cobb ever. Was he was a Cobb 3 times. The first time he had a hard time and he didn't get fired, but he kind of got told, go sit at this desk at sub school for a little while. Right. And, then he got another shot at it after he spent time being in like, I think a DMC or something. And he got another shot at it and did really well. And then he was just get picked up for CMC. And then he came to the Carter as my Cobb, and he's amazing. So it's like, how many of those have we flushed? You know what I mean? And I'm talking like, this dude is the break glass in case of emergency CMC. Like he's amazing. He's like, if I got to pick the crew of a submarine I was going to sea on, that dude would be the Cobb, not me. Like I'd be like, go get him out of retirement and drag him down to my submarine. So it's like, yeah, we could have not had that if we had a zero defect policy in that case, but like with COs, they kind of treat it that way. And so he has a great article on that, and we're going to do a podcast talking about that and some other stuff eventually. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that's the problem, is that it's like a zero defect policy where they just flush these really talented, really intelligent people for one misstep that like, did anything really go horribly wrong there? Like, cause he was saying, cause Cordell was a captain and he commanded 2 ships, I think. And he was saying he's got buddies that got fired for, and like nothing really happened. It was like a near miss that they just decided like, okay, before you actually crash the ship, we're going to fire you. Or like no gear exploded, no people actually got hurt. And then John told a story on the sleep one about how based on him not sleeping, some people got hurt. Like, cause he wasn't paying attention to all the things that were happening during an evolution. And so like, and that was his fault. And he said that he's like, this was legitimate. It wasn't like you're the CO, so it's your fault. Like, he's like, no, this was like legitimately my fault, cause I ordered a backing bell when I shouldn't have. And it's cause I wasn't alert and aware of all the things that were going on. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that we're going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole. So
yeah,
I don't want to take away any more of your sleep, dude.
Yeah. I need about 8 times more of that than I get.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We clearly had fun. It was cool to do it with the video. It's been fun just learning how to edit and like going down the rabbit hole of like publishing them on YouTube. And there's all kinds of idiosyncrasies. Like I already went kind of down a rabbit hole learning when I was posting just the waveform ones in a way. And then just the actually editing video is a whole nother adventure. So I hope you appreciate the amount of work that goes into me doing this all largely by myself. Thanks to Bob for making time. It's a busy week for Chiefs right now with the Chiefs season coming to an end. But I really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun. Happy to talk about any of this stuff too. Like I know I don't know how interested anyone actually is anyway, but like I kept a lot of it close to the vest because I was on active duty and I just kind of wanted to protect that privacy part and not make it about me or not make it, I don't know, like open it up to shots about it being a look at me project or me doing it for an eval bullet or whatever. And now it doesn't matter because I literally just got my retired ID today. So it's like, it's official. But yeah, so that was fun. More to come. I have a couple other video ones done. I just have to edit them and That's, again, like a whole new heavy lift I got to get through, but I'm hoping to improve the quality of these as I go. If you got any suggestions, comments, concerns, questions, whatever, as always, hit us up. Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast at gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast. You can DM us on Instagram, Reddit, or Discord at dgutspodcast. Also, if you want to support us, you can go to dgutspodcast.com. There's a donate button on the website. We launched the Patreon, which I'm really pumped about. Thank you for those of you that have already signed up. Patreon.com/dgutspodcast. Shout out to William McIver, by the way. I should have done that at the beginning, but he was the very first guy to sign up, and at the $100 a month tier, God bless you, sir. Help us pay all these bills and kind of turn this thing into a business model so that I can continue expanding and doing all the things. This all costs money. So we appreciate that. And then if you want to support us in any other ways, you can always subscribe, like, follow, share on all the platforms for all the things, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. And then also, Don't Give Up the Ship Apparel. Go to dgutspodcast.com/shop. Get yourself some naval pride and heritage gear you'll actually wear in public. And as always, thank you for all the support. Getting to this point has been an adventure. I can't believe I'm still doing this, but I'm excited for what's to come. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship. Please hit the like button, drop a comment down below on what you thought, and subscribe to the channel.